Welcome back after lunch. I am making a request. You have to sleep at your own risk. And I would suggest, I've been a professor all my life, teaching at IIM, and cold calling is part of the practice we follow in our classes. So, and I'm sure you will enjoy the session. So, and I'm also sure the speakers that we have for this session, one better than the other. So, it's going to be a very interesting session. I must thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity to chair this session. I also want to mention that I enjoy the privilege of being a professor of economics or a former RBHA professor of economics at IIM Bangalore. That's the capacity in which I'm participating here, not as a banker. As far as our session is concerned, we are running a little late, as you know. We would attempt to cover as much time as possible so that the cultural program that we have does not get impacted. The speakers that we have for our session, we have Dr. Shamika Ravi. She's member from the Economic Advisory Council. We have Professor Bhushan Patwardhan, former Vice Chancellor UGC and former Vice Chairman UGC and Chairman NAAC and National Research Professor Ayush Savitribhai Phule Pune University. And then we have, I think, Dr. Abhishek Samantraya from IIT Roorkee. And then we have Professor Satish Sharma, being a dear colleague and friend. He was the RBA chair professor, and he'll be briefing us on the concept. As the title of the session goes, I think it's a very important topic that we are handling. As an economist, extremely important for us to really look at the data, the analytical aspects of the data. Even in the forenoon, there were issues on data that kept coming up. And then the research for development that we are talking, especially keeping in mind the artificial intelligence. So I think this topic that has been brought into the conference is a forward looking topic. Artificial intelligence, the role it will play in economic development. Let me just briefly mention to you the role of artificial intelligence and machine learning in the banking sector is playing a very significant role, and we in the banks are thinking how to harness this so that we can leapfrog way beyond what the advanced countries are. And because we have a digital advantage in our country, because computer literacy is very high in our country, we are leading. And the best example of the lead that I'm mentioning is the digitalization, the UPI that the whole world is looking at and trying to buy from us. So I myself am looking forward to this special session which has been organized by IEA. Let me invite to begin with Professor Satish Sharma, the RBHA professor. He is going to brief us on the concept. Professor Satish Sharma, please.
Before I begin, just a small correction. I am a Satish Verma. My name plate is here. So please, because I made this, I said this because you said twice Satish Sharma. I am a Satish Verma. Sometimes we flow, in our own way. So that sometimes, anyway. So my duty is just a concept briefing because for this particular theme, I wrote the concept note. Now, what we had in mind at the time of writing this concept note, and how did we visualize it, and what kind of answers we are trying to search. This is what I am going to present before you. The first point which I would like to put before this august house, the chairman, and the speakers of the session. The first point, artificial intelligence has made incredible advances and has far exceeded its role originally conceived, which was one of mimicking human intelligence. Now it has taken over a variety of tasks, including enable connectivity and enhance productivity. But adoption and reaping advantages of artificial intelligence technologies is beset with many barriers. Hence, we expect deliberations on the mechanisms that may be suggested to leverage artificial intelligence technologies to ensure social and inclusive growth in line with the development philosophy of the government. The second issue I am going to present is data is a critical input in artificial intelligence. What measures, therefore, be suggested to address the issues involving data deficiency, data gaps, data usage, of course, without consent of the individuals, risk of identification of individuals through data, data selection bias, asymmetry in data aggregation, data security, data collection, and so on. So, all those issues which are there uh, around the data that we need to address because it's critical input for artificial intelligence. Third issue which I am going to present is how should higher education in the country be reoriented towards boosting research for development in the country. Given that the National Education Policy 2020 provides for establishment of the National Search Foundation, research intensive universities, besides the multidisciplinarity and flexibility to integrate courses across the disciplines. So something is expected from this also because this national education policy is laying much more emphasis on research. Particularly, we have provided for the establishment of the National Search Foundation besides the research universities. Fourth question is what measures be suggested to improve quality of search in the country and its culmination into patents. So that is the major one of the major issues and its culmination into patents. Given that the patents granted to the country comprise merely a fraction of that in China, US, Japan, and South Korea, a high patents rejection rate is another issue confronting the country. I think third and fourth is somewhere interconnected. Fifth issue is which measures at policy level be suggested to improve R&D spending in India, which is merely 0.7%, and it has persisted for quite a long time. Given that the government is the largest source of funding for R&D in the country, whereas the contributions by the private sector has been very low. So these are the five issues which I have framed, which I kept in mind while writing the concept note. With these words, Professor Charan Singh ji, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Satish Sharma. You have laid before the panel the major issues that the panel would like to mention. With this, I would now like to invite Professor Sharma, Member Economic Advisor to the panel. Dr. Shamita. I'm really, I think I'm very good. Oh, the lunch is showing it. Sorry for that. Yeah, sure.
I've known Charan Singh ji for so many years now that everything is in great spirits. Okay. First of all, thank you very much for this opportunity. Namaskar, everyone. It's always good to be back in DU. This is home. This is where I did my bachelor's. This is where I did my master's. This is where I really learned. In fact, when people ask me, what have you studied? It's a pity, but I did BA in economics, I did master's in economics, I did PhD in economics. And yet, when you really begin to do research, then your areas of interest have to go so much beyond just the core of economics that we learn. And yet, I think it is the training of economics that I think holds us in the best of stead. It really, I think, gives us an advantage over many disciplines simply on account of the fact that we as a discipline have very good training in terms of data analytics, statistics, econometrics, etc. So I think going back to the roots in terms of this particular session, artificial intelligence, machine learning, natural language processing, etc., all of it is really usage and smart usage of data. But many things pass off for artificial intelligence. Okay, many times it's just big models with lots of data points. It's big data, but it's not really artificial intelligence. So I think one has to also make a distinction between what is AI, what is ML, what is the scope of large language models in India. And remember, India is a very, very unique market also on account of the fact that we have more than 30 languages which have more than 1 million speakers each. So if you begin to think of some of the big topics on which the PM's last visit to the US was focused around, it was also in terms of motivating a lot of the tech companies to consider India as the next phase for research and development in these areas, particularly large language models, and work with our own institutions, because we have one very big advantage similar to China, but because we are open, I think our advantage is a little more superior, is that we have large and diverse data. There are very few countries that really have the kind of diversity. And you know that in statistics or in econometrics, the more variation you have within the data, you are likely to come up with better estimate, because it's the variation that leads you to estimating anything more precisely when you look at relationships, etc. So, when you think of AI application in healthcare, AI application, whether it is in terms of operations research or logistics, etc., these are helping in real time basis in terms of the way industry is growing. So there is a lot of usage of these techniques as far as Indian industry is concerned. I think in Indian policy making, which is the area that now I am in, and which I can now speak about a little more comfortably, is that I think data has found its way into the heart of almost all our major decision making. And the questions often from the chief executive is, Dekh lijiyega, is there any data on this? Could you give us some more evidence on this? What are likely to be unintended consequences? In theory, we can say many things, but unless you put it to test and you put some empirical evidence to it, it is just anecdote. And the problem with anecdote is that every anecdote can be pulverized by another anecdote. So to an anecdote, you can have equal and opposite anecdote. It is data that is relatively more objective. And because data is relatively more objective, it really aids decision making. It helps make a case for something. In fact, if you see this year's New Delhi Declaration of G20, data and data governance is a very large part of this, because digitalization has happened at a speed and scale in India which is unheard of. It has never been, it's unprecedented. But when that happens, we also have to take the lead in terms of how is it that we are going to govern these data systems, right? And that is not just about privacy. It also has to do with, just basic legislations and how do you guarantee the right usage. That is why so much effort right now is being put forward in putting a framework for consent, etc. In fact, if you look at the power of data analytics, let me tell you that even at hospital level, so if you go to All India Institute of Medical Sciences, it's using, they get on an average 2.5 million patients every OPD, only OPD, 2.5 million patients every year, and across the big 7 departments. So you are seeing such variation, you can put this data, and they are using this data, right from simple things like scheduling, because scheduling in a public hospital, when you really don't have to pay, there is a lot of no-show. And when no-show happens, it leads to a lot of inefficiency, because doctors are your biggest constraint, no? Research-wise. So getting proper scheduling, and then you see in the data that some days, the probability of no-show is much higher. Some time in the day, the probability of no-show is higher. So these are things which are only possible if you look at data. Then you can even begin to look and measure what are the probability of hospital-induced infection, which is a very big problem. Which OTs are likely to have more probability of that. So on a day-to-day basis now, big data is being used to channel and optimize resources within institutions, public institutions. In fact, if you look at algorithm medicine, we are not there yet, but we have to also think about, in a country where we are so resource poor in terms of healthcare and human resources, in particular doctors and nurses, using AI models or these applications can really assuage, this can really help us overcome some of these core hindrances. All right. So these are all under process in terms of consideration. If you look at the issue of funding, jo Professor Verma just mentioned, I had put together a commentary article at Brookings about 10 years back on research funding in India. I'm glad to say that since then, we've made certain progress. But that public-private break is a global break, in the sense that there are going to be many kinds of research, because it cannot be developed into a revenue model. It will never have market solution, right? Private sector is not going to pay for the kind of research all of us sitting in this room do. Poverty, welfare, public health, infrastructure, these are public in nature. Therefore, it has to be funded by public sources. So whether it is philanthropy, whether it is the government, it will not find a private revenue model. However, unlike other countries, in India, our private spending on research and development has not picked up at the rate at which the economy is picking up, particularly for a complex economy such as ours. So if you look at the other giants, right, China, if you even look at countries like Brazil, you can look at Vietnam, etc. Their private spending is now looking, in fact, China is looking extremely robust. The point is, in IT, we have taken a lead over the last 35, 40 years. But AI and all ML, etc., that we are talking about is like the next stage of exactly that revolution. But while we were 10 years ahead of China in IT, we are at least 10 years behind China as far as AI is concerned. So there is this widening sort of this distortion which is emerging, because I think the private sector is not putting in these kind of resources. Now we have new institutions, Professor Verma, like the National Research Foundation. Resources have been put. Also, if you look at the funding arm, ICSSR, ICMR, etc., etc., these are different apex funding arms of the government for research in different areas. Sometimes it's, in fact, in almost all places, we do have a considerable amount of resources which are finding difficult to be given out. So it is not the resource which is the constraint today. I think we need to build better capacity in terms of funding more proposals, in writing proposals, in doing the kind of quality work, and writing proposal and evaluating proposals. It is exactly the same impediment we are also seeing in terms of patent granting. We have very limited capacity with the bodies that grant patents and copyrights, etc. So resource right now is not as much a constraint as developing the capability and the human resource. We need more people. In fact, today, India is not data poor. We have a lot of data. We've never had so much data. Our real constraint is people who can analyze. So it is data by itself is like crude oil. What are you going to do with it? To transform data into information requires people such as yourselves. It requires people with the training, the necessary training, to transform all this noise into useful information. And that is why I think we should call upon, I think even as a body, the IEA, why as economists, I think we owe it to the nation to double our effort into training and also just putting out more proposals and possibly doing more research, possibly funding more work which are data heavy, which are analytical and empirical in nature. Right? So I think I have a much more optimistic outlook towards the future. As a country, we only have to gain through these kind of advancements that are happening. But we do need to do a lot of in-house, right? There's a lot of work that we need to do as a body, because I do think we are right now very short-staffed. And my full support to the association, and in any way that I can help, I'm here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sharma. You are very right. I think there is a need to develop capacity within our profession. Sometimes there is a need for it. So I totally agree with that. Thank you for your time and sharing your thoughts with us. Now let me to Professor Kushi, who is the former vice chairman of the. We are going to be speaking to us about the education policy, the other issue that Professor Shiva stated before us, and he's talking to us about the new education. Yes.
Thank you. Thank Indian Economic Association for this kind invitation. It is always a pleasure to participate in your conferences, sir, and my dear friend Professor Malhotra, Professor Madan, and the whole team. Sachin. I learn quite a lot every year when I come here, and today I have a special treat to have a distinguished panel. Professor Verma charted out the whole plan for the session, and after Shamika ji's very brilliant presentation on data and artificial intelligence, I'll try to present something about education, because all of us would agree that today we are in a situation, whatever it is, education has played important role, and education will continue to play an important role. Uh, my There was a presentation. Can so First disclaimer: I am not an economist by training. I am a biomedical scientist. I happen to be vice chairman of the UGC, that gave me exposure to the higher education scenario in the country. I also was chairman of NAC, and so I can say I have some experience in. Uh, it was downloaded. Yes. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And I'm also privileged to have a distinguished audience here, including Professor Ramesh Chand and all others, Professor Ram Singh here. So it's so nice to interact with you. And as I told you, I'm more come here for learning than actually talking about. Professor Malhotra was very keen that I come here and talk about education and research for national development, and that's why I thought of taking this theme to go ahead. So first part is education. All of us know about NEP 2020, but I would only say that any policy, and this is although not from economics, we keep on hearing this, is as good as it is implemented. And mind well, although we call it as NEP 2020, actually NEP was 2019. That's the year when NEP was submitted by the committee under Professor Kasturi Rangan. So it's already so many years have passed, and still the implementation part, major implementation part, still remains to be executed. NEP has several important points. For the first time, is uh, some education policy talked about what really India as Bharat needs, and that is one of the major, I would say, highlight of this. It created a student-centric system, and some of the parameters which were already implemented includes academic bank of credit, which means that now students can choose what they want. They can go on earning credit, they can deposit those credits in bank, and they can use or redeem them whenever they want to do that. One point I want to mention here is during we are in Amrut Kal, but the emphasis in our education system, or the kind of a glamour which we have given to STEM disciplines in education system, I think it is not right, because uh, if we really look at the uh, holistic education which NEP talks about, they are saying that you need to bring a balance. And I feel that on one side, India has top of the top institutions in STEM, IITs, IIMs, NIPER, ICERs, but not a single institution of that level for humanities and social sciences. So, are we really ignoring the right brain? That's the question I really wanted to pose. The role of teachers also is going to change, and the AI ML, because this session also touches that, I wanted to mention this point, which I will expand a bit further. The purpose of education actually is educatedness and well-being. It is not about degree giving, but it is about becoming a person educated enough. And there are four segments, I would say. First is the academic segment, which brings intellectual strength, general knowledge, scientific temper, self-reliance. But equally important are other sectors also: the moral and spiritual values, the social sensibilities. I used to say that if our graduate is not able to sensitize the or understand the mind of a farmer who is committing suicide in Marathwada in Maharashtra or somewhere in Andhra, can we call that student as an educated student? And if that student doesn't know basics of our agriculture, what is kharif, what is rugby, or many times if you ask a question from where mangoes come, they should not answer that they come from a mall or from a grocery shop. Means these are the things which we miss really in our education, which NEP pointed out that there has to be a holistic way to do it. The technology enabled education, there is clearly shift happening from teaching to learning, because teaching is about structured. Teacher is authoritative. It is authoritative teaching. It is more serious, it is more passive, it is more forceful. We say that whatever we teach inside the classroom is only teaching and can be considered only for credit. Why? Society is a great teacher. Why can't we consider what happens outside? If some girl student do 6 months in Arangetram, why can't we consider that effort as a academic effort? So this kind of a monopolization of teaching by teachers also is a question. Means that also has been addressed by NEP to some extent. And teaching is more unidirectional, monologue. It is as against learning, and we have to really make this shift as early as possible. And I can see, including Delhi University, at several universities, such change is happening, which is becoming more. Education is becoming more flexible, more playful, more active, more voluntary, multi-directional, dialogue-driven, which was our original pedagogy. Our original pedagogy in Bharat was dialogue driven. Upanishad, this whole pedagogy, dialogue driven pedagogy. We lost somewhere in between. We may be, and role of teacher in the whole thing also is important. Today's teacher's role, by and large, I would say, is giving more information, but it is outdated. We don't need teacher to give information, because students are much smarter than us to get information. They have grown with technology. We have learned technology, and there is a big difference in it. So teachers are needed to make sense out of that information, to convert that into knowledge, then to skill, and then to talk about insights. Teachers should actually be able to give insights based on their own experience. And then, so these are the levels, starting from uh, giving information, that is the uh, ordinary teacher or adhyapak, to upadhyay, to acharya, to pandit, to drashta, and then ultimately to guru. But the pedagogy approach also has changed. Earlier the Gurukul pedagogy was entirely different. It was based on master discipline relationship. It was spontaneous, life-oriented learning. It was learning by doing. So all this was based on Gurukul pedagogy. But then we created or the British system came in, which was Kulaguru based system, vice chancellor or administration based system, in which this whole thing was changed, because the purpose of education at that time was entirely different. The purpose of education was to create English speaking people who will be able to serve in East India Company. But now we are really talking about nurturing global citizens. That's what NEP 2020 has talked about. And you will see that there are several attributes which are required when we want to create global citizens. The blended pedagogy is the future, and because this is also co-hosted by the School of Distance Learning of this university, I really wanted to tell you that this is going to be the future. The blended pedagogy is going to be the future. We have shifted, or we have transgressed from correspondence courses, kind of a postal correspondence courses, to now online, and which will go even beyond that. And the first generation to today, we are in fifth generation of education, which includes the educational semantic web, which will be AI enabled, database assisted, and it's kind of a cobot. So co-learning with robots, teachers, and students. So this is what is the future. AI and future education actually, we can see a lot changes being happening, and the teachers who are still there at the lower end of pyramid or adhyapak level teachers, will become redundant in the days of AI which are coming up, because the 21st century skills are entirely different than what we have been giving in the last century. But we should not really live in 21st century with the 20th century or 19th century mindset. And by and large, teachers even today are happening to be in similar kind of a mindset. I'm not talking about Delhi University or top universities, but the base of the pyramid, which is colleges, distributed across villages. There, the situation is different. Uh, Again, I will touch upon this as a final point. We have been giving lot of emphasis on the structural, analytical, reductive, restrictive, which are all left brain, but we are forgetting the creative aspect of it. And the right brain is equally important. India has high caliber STEM institutions, but we need at least one of that level. Uh, and this advocacy we just published in EPW, saying that advocacy for National Institute of Human Studies, we need really a world-class institute for human studies or humanities to nurture the development of critical thinkers with high-order cognitive capabilities, innovative minds to emerge as thought leaders, tech-savvy, responsible global citizens, and cultured human beings grounded in universal value and committed to the planetary well-being. This is what is actually the purpose of education, and that will be attended mostly by contributing both sides of our brain. So the next is research. The SkyMago country ranking, if you see, and if you take countries like US, UK, Germany, Japan, China, and India, just for comparison, you will see that in research, India is the lowest, obviously. And not only that, but not only lowest, but it is also lowest in H index. That means our papers, whatever are being published, are not cited. And the research output impact, if you look at the last decade, then you will be able to see that even small countries like Hong Kong and Singapore, they are much higher than the global average. If you take one as a baseline, these two are much higher, and India is still below the global average or the global baseline of one. So what does it say? What does the data say? This data says that Indian research is growing, which is good. Total number of publications are also growing, which is also good, but total percentage of documents cited is going down, which is not good really. And also the percentage of documents published in top 10% of the journals is also not increasing to our satisfaction. So these are really the areas of interest, and I would say that regulating something is not going to serve the purpose. So I hope the National Research Foundation doesn't go in a regulatory mode, but goes in a facilitatory mode, because we have seen that whenever you try to regulate, it bounces back. And this we experienced while I was at UGC. 88% of the journals from the UGC approved lists were found to be predatory. 88% journals. And so we had to come out with UGC care list of journals, which was a big exercise. And when we say that you have to publish 2 papers if you want to submit your PhD, or if you want to really become assistant professor to professor, you have to publish so much. The moment you bring compulsion, then people go on compliance mode. And this has caused this kind of a cobra effect. And that flourished thousands of predatory journals in the university system. And this is a very, very serious issue. The predatory journal menace, we published this article in Current Science, wherein we showed that 88% of journals coming from India, which are in official list, are predatory. So this UGC care and good academic research practices. This document we published in association with Web of Science, which is one of the credible agency, and this is to bring in the publication ethics culture within our teachers, within our students, and within our faculty. Last part is development, education, research, and development. As all of you know, especially you are from economics, so you know and will appreciate also, there is a clear correlation. High education leads to high income levels, low education leads to high employment rates. There is a clear correlation, as well as education and economics. But is this a correlation or causation? This is a question which we need to ask. India, you will find that we are somewhere in the midway. United States on one side at a very high, Japan, US very high. We are in the middle, but what is important is education and economics, the relationship to understand. You will see that education economics relationship mostly reverse. Countries have invested more in education only after they have become rich. So the discussion about investment in education also needs to be revisited, and we need to really, and Shamikaji's problem of capacity building, I would say that it is most important problem today, or challenge today, or most priority today in most of these sectors, including education, because our teachers' capacity also need to be developed. Our teachers are not yet capable of handling the global challenges, and they need to really um, trained and equipped for that purpose. If we ask this question, what is the value of university education? Value for money and time. And you will see that is a famous book, Case Against Education. And they are saying, this Brian Kaplan is saying, current education is about signaling, and I agree with him. The road to academic success, for example, and I have talked to several recruiters, they say that we don't recruit people uh, by based on what you are taught them. We don't care what equations they know, or what kind of theories they know. We look at their whole attitude. We look at them 360 degrees assessment, So how they are able to deal with their colleagues, what is their outlook to look at the society, how are their views. So all these are soft skills which we really miss in our current education system, and we need to really do something. We tried two things. One scheme, we said that where is our education and research connected to the national development? This question, when we ask, we realize that there are several schemes, but hardly our students get to know what they are and what they can contribute to them. So this scheme called STRIDE, Scheme for Transdisciplinary Research for India's Developing Economy, was created by the university with a full focus on humanities, social sciences and development. Because we said that there are several opportunities for sciences and technologies or STEM to get funding. But from where funding will come for social science and humanities? There are hardly any funding. And at that time, Professor Malhotra was at ICSSR. I was chairing ICSSR, and he gave excellent leadership at ICSSR, I must say. And he actually conceived this impactful policy research in social science. But unfortunately, both these programs could not fly. For example, STRIDE, Connecting Universities to National Mission. You will see here so many national programs are there. But how many of our students actually, or faculty members actually do some research to support those national programs? So STRIDE, one requirement was, we'll give you humanities funding in crores, provided you bring 30% of funding from national programs. So you have to work with national programs, and then you will be able to get this kind of. So this would have really brought in direct involvement of our students and faculty members in our own national programs. And ministries also would have been very happy to get this kind of a collaboration. This is not only public-private partnership, but this is going beyond that. So education and research must contribute to national development. It is not possible merely by making regulations. We have to strengthen research and innovation culture. We have to create conducive ecosystem. The strengthen STEM, agreed, but in addition, we have to also strengthen humanities and social sciences, encourage public-private partnership, and we need funding and facilitation. I would say facilitation first and then funding. Well, I don't see really there is any problem of funding. There is problem of ideas. There is problem of execution. And I hope that IA can really help to bring this advocacy role. And I really want, Shamika ji, you are also here. Professor Ramesh Chand is here. Both of you are in good positions. I tried my best. We need at least one solid institution in humanities for India. We can't ignore humanities and social sciences for long. We must invest in it, and we must bring that glamour to these disciplines. Today that glamour is only to technology, IT, biotechnology. I am biotechnology person, but still I am telling we are incomplete unless we collaborate and understand and work with humanities and social sciences. So with this, I would like to thank IEA for this opportunity and thank you all delegates for your kind attention.
I think Professor Nishan, you have hit the nail on the head. And I must thank you, though you started by saying you're not an economist, but you're thinking of all things. The important issues that you have, I have myself seen at IIM Bangalore, we need to ask the students, there's an opportunity cost. When you're going to be doing your MBA here, you are from a good place, you're losing some money. And you will be surprised in many of the industries in Bangalore, they told me exactly the same thing that you have just mentioned, that we are not really looking just at the education, we are looking at the holistic development of the student who has to work in an environment where the team is very important. So at the IIMs, at least we have started bringing in the team and the soft skills which you mentioned. But you're right. In my own days while studying at Harvard, I was surprised when I used to ask them which is your most prized course. They would say commerce and law. And in India, if you tell somebody that he's doing commerce and law, then they'll certainly think that this probably person did score well in 11 when I did not well. I myself have been thinking how many, all the IIMs across the country, but how many Chiriram College of Commerce? There's just one in the whole country. So you're very right that social sciences has most been neglected. I really wish that you had come earlier and I was on a different year of birth. My wife is from IIT Roorkee. He just doesn't listen to me. Just because of this difference. So more than what you are talking in an academic environment, I face it every day. All of you are awake, I can see it. Thank you very much. With that, let me move on. And I want to thank you. I also must mention, Dr. Shamita Ravi rightly mentioned, it's just not that the economists need to listen to economists. There's so much we as trained economists have to draw from other fields like sociology, psychology. And that is how the economic profession then develops, because all our indifference curves can only be drawn if we have some knowledge of those areas. So interacting with the non-economists is almost essential for economics. And that is why I always thought that the School of Economics has the Department of Geography and Sociology along with economics, and that's why they are premier institutions. But again, that brings me to the point, other than the D schools, other than Shriram College of Commerce, in the rest of the country, we do not have a premier institution. So I must thank you for your sharing thoughts with us, and I totally agree. We need to nurture global citizens, and the aim of education has to be national development, other than just keeping students in the classroom. With this, now I think we need to move on and invite Dr. Abhishek Samantare from IIT Roorkee. He is going to be talking to us from the angle of artificial intelligence. I'm looking forward to his talk.
Okay, so good afternoon, everyone, and first of all, thanks to IEA for this invitation. And so the topic is it okay? Is it audible, right? Okay, great. So the topic for today is AI for economic policy making. I have cough in my throat, so please bear with me. So this is going to be a conceptual talk. It's not a technical talk, and the takeaway that I would like to have uh, uh, I'd like you to have from this talk is how to think about AI, what AI exactly is, and how it can contribute to policy making decisions in governments. Okay, so we have already done quite well with applying AI in business decisions. So my motivation for this talk is to help you to think how to apply AI in economic policy making. Okay, so my talk will be divided into three parts. I'll start with explaining briefly what AI is. Okay, then I'll tell you how you can apply AI in policy applications. I'll give you two concrete cases how you can apply it, and then I'll tell you how to, after you build the strategy, of AI with policy application, how you can finally implement it. Okay, that is also a very important thing. Okay, so AI. So let's say it as the AI is the new tool. Okay, so this new tool that you see is one of the technologies in the industry 4.0 setup. Okay, so and there has been a long evolution to this, um, and surprisingly, all the different technologies have converged to what we see today. Okay, so there has been evolution in computing power, there has been evolution in data collection, there has been evolution in connectivity and internet. All of these three core things have finally contributed to what we contributed to in a way we can actually go and implement AI. Okay, otherwise it would have been in the textbooks. So let us not be scared about the word AI. So because I'm showing you the simplest AI model, and you already know this linear regression, right? So what you see is very a scatter plot with a straight line. So this is a simple model, which is you can call it the simplest AI model. Okay. So what it is doing is there are few data points. Um Basically, you can say that there are two features. Okay, X and Y, and what the model is trying to do over here is it's trying to find a relationship between X and Y. Okay, and this is like how you start thinking AI. Okay, we all have done this thing. Okay, so now what happens is you slowly you move from this linear regressions to, you see, you go from A to B. You can no longer classify blue and green dots using a straight line. You have to use some kind of nonlinear structures, like the circle is separating the blue from the greens. So what is happening over here is we're shifting away from linear models to non-linear models. Okay, and as you see over here, the right one, again, non-linearity is also there in terms of polynomial models. Okay, so this is what these people have been talking about in the, there is a much market hype about AI ML. I'm telling you, it's not, you don't believe on all of these hypes. It's simply, they're simple models. Okay, you start from simple models, always start thinking from the basic models, grow gradually as you need it. Okay, so AI needs data. Okay, so if you have simple data, the one that you see over here, then the pattern is very simple, isn't it? We see that it's a very simple pattern. In this kind of data, if you try to use complicated models, it is costly for you, and you will overburden your calculations. You don't need AI in every situation, because linear regression that just showed that we have a nice relationship, right? We don't need complicated AI models for such simple data. Now, why then is AI there in the first place? Uh, it's there because data is not as simple as this every time, because we have grown to a stage where we have not X and Y but X, Y, Z, and so many features. We have numerous features as well as we have numerous observations. Okay, so we have grown in both the dimensions. Okay, so complex data means there are a lot of complex patterns hidden in the data, behaviorally, structurally. Okay, so that is where, if you want to understand those relations, you have to use models beyond linear regression. Okay, that is when you start moving to machine learning models and deep learning models and so on. Okay, those are the class of models which people in computer science that say it AI, but they are all statistical and mathematical models only. Okay, so don't, so from now onwards you should not worry about the word AI. Everyone can do it. Okay, so overview of AI tools. So the core science is very simple. It's a combination of statistics and mathematics, descriptive, inferential, and model building. Okay, and on top, and gradually you go out to AI in terms of the modeling aspect. The models basically become um, not linear; they become non-linear and highly complex. Okay, that is what we call it ML, DL. Now you might be hearing a lot about generative AI. So generative AI is basically a subset of DL. Okay, so that is one part which you can think of from the trying to generalize linear regression. Okay, that will all come inside MLDL. But there are other aspects of AI like NLP, vision, okay, robotics, IoT. All of these things are also, they also come under AI. So now what I want to tell to you is we cannot apply all of this for economic policy making. So today I will tell you two fields, topics, two concepts, how you can apply it in economic policy. Okay. So analytics is basically the focus, the task that you want to do. If you want to explore a data set, that would come under exploration. If you want to do some prediction task, that would come under predictive analytics. Explanation is like causal explanations, okay, experiments and so on. Then the last one is prescription, where you finally make a decision. Okay, so you have a bunch of options. You have to pull some lever. So which lever will you pull? So that is the time when you have to go to prescriptive analytics. Okay. So broadly, if you want to define AI, will not call it, it's a little bit different from doing naive data analysis. We'll call it intelligent systems that adapt to gaining human-like cognitive skills. Okay, so it would include learning from previous incidents, like machine learning and linear regressions, all of these things, adapting to new environments. Okay, understanding the meaning, like um, for example, when you type something in Google, you type a long sentence, right? It understands what you are asking and it gives you results accordingly. So understanding the meaning is one part. Capacity to reason, generalizing. These are all uh, some concepts that would fall under what we call as intelligent systems. Okay. So the AI life cycle is very simple. Uh, you basically have to plan the uh, strategy, then you collect the data, do the modeling. The second step is verification and validation. Okay, you verify how good your model is doing before you can deploy it, right? So after deployment, you basically monitor your deployment and you basically check how well it is doing. Okay, so this is how the AI lifecycle works in any model. Okay, so now I'll go to policy applications. So here in general, AI has been applied already in many different business decisions, be it marketing, product management, supply chain, industry applications, even in socio-economic topics like misinformation, polarization, media, epidemiology, everywhere it has already been applied. In general, my opinion is that industries such as finance, retail, advertising have been the sectors where AI has already been quite exploited. As you can see, there is a clear link that they are all private players. Okay, so however, solutions to problems of cities concerning transport, energy, and water supply, which have a social angle, they have not been quite AI exploited. Okay, so that is still the gap is very much there. Okay, the socioeconomic policy, we all know we focus on allocation and distribution of resources and income, and we also try to focus on growth and stability of the economy. Okay, so tools which policymakers usually have are, let us say, fiscal policies and monetary policy. We also have governance and conduct. We also have market regulations, but these are like you can distribute your policy tools in these classes, and then of course you apply these policies through some focus areas like health, education. It depends upon what your priority is in the given context. Okay, so policy life cycle also follows the agenda setting, like to identify which issue you want to solve. Okay, then it comes about charting some policy options, like what are the options by which we can solve it. Then comes decision making, like out of these options which is the best that we should go for. Okay, then comes implementation of the policy and evaluation of the policy. In all of these things, usually policy evaluation has already been done using data analytics and also, I mean, traditional econometrics and data analytics. Okay, decision making can also be done through AI. Formulation of topics can also be done through AI, and agenda setting can also be done. So AI can literally contribute to all aspects of policy making. Okay, this is some points how it can help. So you can really simulate real world behavioral societies. And you can handle multiple policy objectives and decision levers. This could be mathematically non-friendly objectives. Okay, so and understanding the robustness and explainability of your policies. Okay, for example, small perturbations in policies should not produce some new results. That is something that would be a robust policy decision. And also, AI can also help you beyond RCTs, you can nowadays even you can go for conditional average treatment effects, and nowadays you can also go and look at individual treatment effects. So that is also possible if you have a large data set and you apply correct machine learning methods. So today there are a range of areas where you can literally think about applying AI in policy making. So I'll give you two. Uh, I'll basically it's not possible to discuss all areas. So what I chose to do is to pick circular economy and taxation. Okay. So let us see how we do it. So circular economy basically you can describe it as an industrial system that uses digital technologies during the product life cycle phase. Okay, and implement circular strategies and practices aiming at value creation through increased environmental, social, and economic performance. So let me break the jargon slowly for you. So on the left side, you see that we're definitely using digital technologies, and that is what is the meaning of being smart. Okay, you are being smart by using those digital technologies, which includes big data, AI, blockchain, and other technologies, Industry 4 technologies. The final objective is to create value not only for economy but also for society and environment. You have to respect all three. Now, while you do that, you have to make sure that all the entire product life cycle of any industry, the middle portion applies to all industry, be it health, be it finance, be it any manufacturing, be it any industry. Okay. So, irrespective of industry, we need to ensure that uh, the design, manufacturing, distribution, usage, all of these phases um, product building, uh, we basically use AI as much as possible. What is the meaning of using AI is that the underlying principle is that the physical flows, like you bring the raw materials, you manufacture it, you send out to market, and all of this process should be thought of as informational flows in the way that you collect information at each stage and make use of that information to be intelligent to make those processes efficient. Okay, so that is the meaning of being smart in a circular economy. All right. So circular economy can best be understood. Circular economy is an abstract concept. A real implementation is smart cities. In smart cities, AI also plays a big role in edge computing, where um, so you can imagine that Amazon, right? So we release a lot of information through our apps to one server, which is the Amazon server. Instead of doing that, Amazon processes all the details. So instead of doing that, all the processing can also happen with the phones, tablets that we have in our hands. So it's like distributed computing. Okay, so that is the concept of edge computing, and it happens through AI technique called federated learning. So I'll quickly wind up with what is smart taxation. So smart taxation is basically this is our economic inequality has been accelerating in recent decades, right? So it has negatively impacted a lot of socio-economic outcomes, and taxes though are important to improve equality. At the same time, it will also take your productivity down. Okay, so there is a trade-off between productivity and equality. Okay, so there have been some policies where, be it regressive or progressive tax policies, um, this kind of policies has been compared with a new AI based policy, which is a reinforcement learning policy. This tool basically simulates an economy with people and policymakers. There are two types of agents. Okay, so agents are making decisions with what skill to learn, what work to do, and policymakers are making decisions about how much tax to impose. So this does not include any assumptions of workers' utility or things like that, which we do in traditional economics. And just by doing this kind of simulations, this is actually a paper in Science Advances. So what you see over here is that the AI economics, the green one, is far better in balancing the equality productivity trade-off. Okay, so compared to traditional tax policies, which has actually been implemented in US, or the tax policy by size, which is an analytical formula, you take any, they have compared it with this three free market tax policy as well. So the AI economist is actually performing very nice. Okay. So these are the two things I wanted to tell you, that AI can really help you to shape the focus area which you want to target, be it health, education, or be it a broader paradigm like circular economy. At the same time, it can also help you to address, um, to shape or redefine your existing policy tools like taxation. Okay, and it and they will really perform very good if they are done correctly. So in terms of implementation, very briefly, there are many challenges that do exist when you try to think, because there are ethical risks, regulations, potential for frauds, allowing people to be educated with what is AI, and all of these things do exist. So we have to deal it at a later stage. So whether to adopt AI or not is, my personal opinion is, we can gradually do it, by first focusing on some essential framework, and then moving on to advanced framework, then towards a targeted framework which would be specific to India. Okay, so I have planned to talk about all of these things, but the time is short, so I'll just, if you're interested, we can always sit and discuss. Okay, so that is it. So the way forward is very simple. In this, there is a big knowledge gap. So a research in AI and economics has to happen through a joint dialogue, including academics and policymakers. And training is AI is essential in today's age. And of course, we need to see some large investments for AI infrastructure. Okay, so I am a session professor here in IIT Roorkee. Okay, so I am in both departments in economics, like in humanities and social sciences under economics discipline, and also in AI. So please feel free to contact us whenever you have any things that you want to need advice or you want to work with us. Please feel free to approach us. Okay, so we'll help you out.
That was self-explanatory, and I thought you went in detail. Thank you very much for that. We are running badly out of time, but given that I have such a powerful panel as Dr. Shamika Ravi from Economic Advisory Council, and we have just heard Professor Bhushan, who brings absolutely new knowledge for us. I was thinking we could take two or three questions. My request to you would be please have very focused questions. The next panel, the speakers for the next panel are already here, and that we have a very tight program in the evening. So I would now request if there are any focused questions. Yeah. So there are three questions. I just take these three and no more. Yes.
I have only two questions. One is about how to reduce the data conflict.
That's one. What is the second?
Number two, the data itself, the supply side, how to make data from demand side.
Thank you. So that's a question for Dr. Shamika Ravi. Yeah. Yes, please.
My question is
Right.
the committee also remember with him.
Right.
I will also remember with him, we had only one meeting, the second meeting never took place. But the real question is that the custodian committee report, on which also I worked, we had suggested the setting up of this fund, research foundation for social sciences. Unfortunately, what I now learned is that it has been shifted to EST. How? Why such things should happen, I think, when the objective was to set up only for social sciences? How surreptitiously it has been shifted, I think, to EST.
Sure. One member asking the other. I don't know how much he'd like to reveal. Yes, the last question.
Sir, I have three questions. First, how to identify and prevent dark web?
That's a question for whom?
All panelists.
I don't know the answer, but let me say first. Thank you. We have had
Second question, sir. How to promote blockchain in banking sector? And third, how to identify fake.
So blockchain we will take during the cultural break. I can talk to you about that. That will be most appropriate to handle then. And I think let's go to the panel now because we're running badly out of time. Yeah, Dr. Shamantaravi.
So the question on data inconsistency, what is the term you use?
Data conflicts.
Conflict. So let's not call it conflict, it's inconsistency. Now we have to be very precise and say which conflict or which inconsistency is it that you're referring to. But in my view, you see, one that the constant effort now is we need more data, right? And who can disagree with that? But what about data quality? And data quality has to keep up with, because if there are statisticians in the room, you know that if you have a large amount of garbage data, it is not really any better. Journalists will often tell you, "Are kuch to data hoga?" No, kuch data is not necessarily an improvement on bad data. So let us at least, as scholars in the room, agree that some things should not all be necessarily politicized. That's number one. Number two, you see, data inconsistency is also, I think, a right because we don't do enough research with the existing. So it's like an elephant and 7 blind or 6 blind men. Somebody will say this. So it's not inconsistent. A lot of those inconsistencies actually get resolved when you start actually analyzing. The third, and I think this is where the data gathering itself has to incorporate scholars. Because every step of the way, we can make data gathering as a science. And everywhere in the world, including in the most advanced economies, they are doing so much to improve their data systems. So why should we rest that, oh, Mahalanobis did all this, and after that now the world has come to an end? That's not. That's actually, it would be unfair to a young, dynamic economy which is racing at a pace, and I'm afraid administration is behind. And I think data administration is also, you need to keep up with the real world. On that. Wasn't his point actually? But wasn't it, I think, administration, just say, there are 500 studies right now, 500 proposals, and this is particularly referring to when you said that researchers and scholars are not involved in the large schemes, etc. The Ministry of Education in the last 1.5 years has put aside some 50 crores, and I think it is a beginning, to fund 500 proposals across almost all our central universities, which are only looking at big national public schemes. And this cuts across every ministry. And this is something I have encouraged a great deal. I think ICSSR is the body through which they are doing it. But I think it's just a beginning. It has to be done because I think the scholars have to be part. Otherwise, all our central schemes have 5% budget which is meant for evaluation, but that part of the budget often sits unutilized. And I think that is where we also have to continue to push because in a large democracy, we have to improve, we have to continuously improve the implementation, perhaps sometimes even the design.
I think because we are running badly out of time, the panelists feel that we should close now. I must thank you for your patience and staying awake in the post-lunch session. I tried my best and I thought I succeeded. I want to thank my panelists for being here with us and sharing your thoughts and wisdom. Thank each one of you. With that, I hand over the session back to the session.
Thank you, sir. It is my privilege to express our heartfelt appreciation to our session moderator and the key speakers for gracing us with their presence and delivering an exceptional talk. I would now like to call Professor Harsh, Professor P. Archnalam, Dr. Siddhipa Malhotra to please felicitate our dignitaries. Professor Charan Singh. Everyone, please give a round of applause.
Yes, Professor Arnachalam from Kochi. Now, Professor Harsh Gandha from Chandigarh, Punjab University, please fairly state. वो भी हैं क्या? कितने? Now, Bhushan, yes, Professor Bhushan Patwardhan, yes, please felicitate. Dr. Sandeepa Malhotra, we are waiting here. Yes.
Speaking longer than the question.
Yes, Professor Bhushan Patwardhan, please felicitate. Now I invite Dr. Kamaljeet. Dr. Kamaljeet, our treasurer, to felicitate Dr. Shamika Rabi. Dr. Muthu Raja, please come to felicitate Dr. Abhishek Samantha. Yes. Okay. They are the organizer. So thank you very much. Now we have to start the new session without any break because we are in the hurry. And in fact, our expert Dr. Gopinath has to take a flight. So the next session on the multidimensional poverty index that will start now. So I invite the madam, please. I invite Professor Beshchan, who is chairing the session. Naam do na. Dr. Gopinath from MS Swaminathan Research Foundation. Professor Amitabh Kundu from RIS. Professor Yogesh Suri. Professor Yogesh Suri, Senior Advisor Niti Aayog. Professor R.K. Mishra, former Director IPE, Hyderabad. And Professor K.K. Bagchi from University of North Bengal, Darjeeling.
I'll just quickly check. Yeah. No, that's okay. No, I'll take it. No. Is it the one, right?
That's
Yeah, it's right here. Yeah, don't miss.
Good to see you. कैसे है? Good. आइए बैठे.
A very good evening to all of you. I, Dr. Abhilasha Meena, Assistant Professor at Department of Management Studies, SOL, extend a warm welcome to all our guests for the third plenary session on multidimensional poverty and India, food, nutrition and health, education attainments, and living standards. As we begin, I would like to request Professor Ramesh Chand to kindly chair the session. Professor Ramesh Chand is currently member Niti Aayog in the rank and status of a Union Minister of State. He has a PhD in Agriculture Economics from the Indian Agricultural Research Institute, New Delhi. He is a fellow of the National Academy of Agricultural Sciences and the Indian Society of Agricultural Economics. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Well, since we are running out of time, I will be very brief in my opening remarks for this important session on MDPI. As you will be knowing that poverty is a very old concept in economics. In fact, the concrete work on estimation of poverty or quantitative dimension of poverty began as early as 1880. So after that, you find that there are estimates available for UK, there are estimates available for US, and subsequently you know how it evolved over time. Though this concept is very old, it always remained sensitive. So I would just like to share one information with you that I did as PhD student. I did a paper which was the requirement, that was survey on poverty and nutrition. So I read one very interesting thing on poverty, that in UK there was lot of concern about rising poverty in London. So UK's Parliament, they constituted a committee under Sir Arthur Bowley to just prepare estimate of poverty. And Sir Arthur Bowley came with the finding that more than half of the population of London city is under poverty. So his findings were presented to Parliament. I just want to tell you about sensitivity. The exact words which British Parliament wrote on that report, final, it was, notwithstanding the eminence of Sir Arthur Wiley, British Parliament has decided to outrightly reject his findings. So that is the sensitivity about estimate of poverty. But what surprised me is that this concept started to be using as early as 1880, but it remained very simple and plain without much of the development around it. It remained tied to income in some way. Then that income further correspond to something, but it remained tied to income. Then we have national estimate of poverty, international estimate of poverty, but all tied to income, whether income is $1 per day per person, $3, like that. I think it was first time in 2010 that OPHI, Oxford University, that Poverty Institute, and UNDP, they came with the new concept of multi-dimensional poverty index, which take us from income to outcome. So I find that this was a very unique development. After that, some country have used it. So in case of India, also Niti Aayog has prepared estimate of poverty at national level and at state level. Dr. Yogesh Suri is with us to share his views on this. So after India came out with this report on multidimensional poverty index, the second report last year, a lot of debate appeared, and the debate is part of economics profession. And there were people who supported it, there were people who opposed it, but those who supported it were in minority, and those who opposed it were in a very large majority. So I am happy that I know that Professor Kundu is one of those person who has appreciated MDPI. I do not know what is the opinion of Mishra ji, Gopinath ji, and Bagchi ji. So please feel free to give your opinion to us. I would request each of the panelists that in interest of time, if you can complete in 6 to 7 minutes, that will be helpful to complete this session on time. So we will begin with Shri Gopinath ji because he has to take a flight at 7 p.m. So Gopinath ji, we start with.
Thank you, Professor. I'm sitting like Ekalaiva. I don't know whether I'm Ekalaiva or not, but many Dronacharyas are here. I used to learn about urban poverty and food and nutrition security by reading Professor Amitabh Kundu's paper, and I can see many senior professors are here. I never been in teaching position, so I still feel I'm a student of economics only. So I thank Indian Economic Association for providing this great opportunity to share some of our ideas with this distinguished delegates. So I directly go to this business. I would like to highlight few points from our study in Tamil Nadu. So we take Tamil. I share this experience from Tamil Nadu because the state has been considered as one of the relatively better performing state in terms of social indicators. Comparatively better performing state in terms of social indicators. So this tell us the learning, the observations what we made in Tamil Nadu that tell us what kind of problems we face when a state is moving into more urbanized, and when you develop some schemes in paper and flag many schemes in paper at system level, but if we have some problems at the delivery level, at the delivery end, what kind of things will come. So these are the 2-3 points I would like to highlight from this presentation. Yes, the whole idea of our study, this study was conducted with the help of UNICEF Tamil Nadu. I don't want to tell about this background of this one with this gathering, but the whole idea was to understand hotspots of malnutrition hotspots within Tamil Nadu and identify factors that are responsible for this kind of malnutrition situation in Tamil Nadu. We used this NFHS 4 and 5 data to identify those districts, and we have conducted this study among 5 districts, and the sample size is 540. The point is we employed some basic level analysis, something like a resource mapping, and the results we have so put it in a P squared M squared framework. There we understand that many schemes are overlapping between departments. I'm talking about this health and nutrition related delivery system only. Yes, we had designed these schemes in a way to deliver by, involving 2-3 departments. But when we deliver at the ground level, particularly at the grassroots level, there are conflicts between the workers who are delivering this one. When one department is implementing this one and another department monitoring the delivery, some kind of conflicts arises in the field that we observed in ground level, and we just mapped using using this responsibility assignment matrix. It's nothing but we analyze these policies and programs and assign responsibility according to assign departments according to the department, according to the responsibility. And we it is something like, yes, one is overlapping. Next one is the roles and responsibilities are not precise and specific at ground level. That is the point. It's not like completely not not clear. It is clear, but it's not crystal clear. So we observed that if we go beyond certain level on adding more services at the macro level, the ground level staff are feeling burden and compromise many important things to achieve certain schemes. Say, for example, this nutrition literacy to pregnant women or training or capacitating pregnant women to handle these nutrition related things is a part and parcel of this Anganwadi worker responsibility. But when we add more services delivering to children through these Anganwadi workers, they compromise this particular component and concentrate on delivering more food, adding more, concentrate more on this delivering food. So this kind of things are happening when we add more services without, what you say, improving grassroots level strength of the ICDS workers, other things. And still, the ICDS worker, the vacancy level is more than 20% in many areas. That is the point from here. And the delivery is not uniform. This we observed in Odisha, 2 districts in Odisha, Rajasthan, and even Jharkhand. But it is existing in Tamil Nadu as well. If an Anganwadi worker is proactive, you can feed different services. If the block officer is very proactive, you can see some kind of more proactive activities in the at the block level. But if the business is as usual, it is something like just delivering it, no follow up, and you can't feel that improvement in the nutrition at the nutrition end. That is a fact existing there. Yes, policy gap. One big gap what we identified here in Tamil Nadu is the adolescent girls in private institutions are completely away from accessing iron and folic acid supplements, these biennial deworming tablets, which is happening at schools, government and government aided schools. The point is more percentage of students are enrolled in private institutions. A state like Tamil Nadu, other states, the proportion is increasing. The mandatory access to these two services, which are very critical for their nutritional part, that is missed in private institutions. Yes, there are states, even Tamil Nadu, they are taking steps to bring students from private institutions to public institutions. And Punjab, they are making very good effort, in even Delhi. But the point is, we don't have time. We need to take some steps to reach these services into private institutions. I'm not talking about MDMS. I'm talking about these two critical services. So this is what this kind of problems this Tamil Nadu is facing. And these adolescent girls are completely out of any schemes and other things. Then diet quality, yes, sir. When they are in schools, they have better this thing. I come to that first few points later. But the overall observation is, when they are in schools, they have better knowledge and attitude. But the point is, knowledge and attitude are not converted into practice. They have, these girls and boys, they have knowledge on what is nutrition, what is good nutrition, what is a good diet. But that knowledge is not transferred into practice. That's one point. The other thing is, when we analyze this NFHS data, we observed that wherever this NCD risk score is high, the high weight to risk ratio is also very high in those districts. I show you those tables there. And similarly, the minimum diet diversity with women, that with at least having 3 out of 6 food groups, if you are not having that kind of thing, the score will be very low. It is very high, very low, where where this overnutrition is very high. That kind of thing, very unbalanced one is there. But very alarming thing is, this kind of situation existing in more urbanized areas, Tiruchirappalli, Karur, and of course Chennai. And Kanyakumari, the far end district, that shows very, very, very high overnutrition. That's closely, very much associated with the diet pattern. The MDDW is very low in Kanyakumari. And this shows how this districts perform. So we just compare this minimum diet diversity for women with the composite index of anthropometric failures. That's a combination of stunting, wasting, and underweight. But wherever this composite index of anthropometric failure is very high, MDDW is very low. Similarly, we have tried with the NCD risk score and weight to hips ratio is high. It's very clear that when your diet pattern is very poor, your composite index of anthropometric failure is very high. When your NCD risk score is very high, you have very high waist to hip ratio among women. And yes, knowledge and partitude I already told you. The service coverage, yes, sir. If a younger woman who is covered under close monitoring of these institutions, they have delivered better nutrition kind of thing. But once they move out of this system, their concentration on this, their attitude towards this nutrition has come down. That means when they are younger women, they eat nutritious food. When they come out of this one, the importance towards this nutritious food has declined. And the conclusion is something like, yes, but it is very good to go for many new initiatives. But the point is, when we come up with new initiatives, we have to improve strength at the grassroots level or find ways to not increase burden of grassroots level workers. And many programs concentrate on maternal nutrition and child below 6 years, but they left out adolescent girls and school-going girls. And we need a better convergence at the grassroots level. That Professor Rameshant has insisted this one during the food systems dialogue that happened at last few days at the India International Center. Here also we observed the same thing. Convergence is not happening effectively at the grassroots level, and more than half of the children enrolled in private schools, which is very much concern. So finally, we need a unified and holistic approach that requires participation and assistance from all stakeholders. From all stakeholders, if possible, we can bring private also into this business. I end here. Thank you very much.
So, if not multi-dimension of poverty, let's give us a multi-dimension of undernutrition. So, very interesting presentation by Plenary. So, next I invite Professor Bharti to bring us back to MDBI proper.
1 second only, because our Dr. Gopinath has to take a flight. So we want to felicitate him. And I request Dr. Anirban Sarkar to felicitate Dr. Gopinath. Thank you very much. Thank you. Now, Professor Bakshi, please, we continue.
How can I carry this? So, a very good afternoon to everyone. So, distinguished panelists and learned audience, members of the audience. So, I am grateful to Professor Malhotra, to Professor Madan for giving me the opportunity to write the concept note on this particular topic. And when Professor Madan proposed or suggested to me to write a concept on the topic, I immediately agreed because this is a favorite topic to me. Because since long I am concerned with this unemployment, then poverty, and other social issues, socio-economic issues, on which I have done a little bit of research and also guided some of the scholars. And so, I'm happy that I could at least go through some literature on the topic and learn a little bit of it. And I'm looking forward to learn from this very learned, very distinguished panelists to hear on the topic, so that I am more enlightened. And also, I'm looking forward to the paper presenters who will be presenting the papers on various dimensions of the issue. And I think my understanding will be more fuller when I listen to all of them. So, with this brief note, I am briefing the concept concept note on the multi-dimensional poverty and India, food, nutrition, and health, educational dimensions, educational attainments, including skill and living standard. So, the resolution of the United Nations General Assembly on 25th September 2015 established the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. SDG 1 in its entirety, that is, end poverty in all its forms everywhere, is multidimensional in nature and definition. While target 1.1 seeks to eradicate extreme poverty, measured as people living on less than $1.25 a day, target 1.2 aims at reducing multidimensional poverty as defined by national definitions by half. The Multidimensional Poverty Index has been used by the UNDP in its flagship Human Development Report since 2010 and is the most widely employed non-monetary poverty index in the world. Historically, poverty estimation has predominantly relied on income as the sole indicator. But the Global Multidimensional Poverty Index, based on the Alcaire-Foster methodology, captures overlapping deprivations in health, education, and living standards. It complements income poverty measurements because it measures and compares deprivations directly. So instead of capability only, it has laid emphasis on functioning also because both capabilities and functionings are important to judge the well-being of individuals. The MPI assesses the nature and intensity of poverty at the individual levels, with poor people being those who are multiply deprived and the extent of their poverty being measured by the extent of their deprivations. The MPI creates a vivid picture of people living in poverty within and across countries, regions, and the world. It is the first international measure of its kind and offers an essential complement to income poverty measures. It measures deprivations directly. It measures deprivation through outcome, as um, Professor Ramesh Chand was referring to it. The MPI can be used as an analytical tool to identify the most vulnerable people, show aspects in which they are deprived, and help to reveal the interconnections among deprivations. So, this can enable policymakers to target resources and design policies more effectively. So, the MPI is very much useful in targeting resources and designing policies more effectively. Government of India has acknowledged the significance of the global MPI under the mandate of the Global Indices for Reform and Growth (GIRG) initiative. The emphasis of the GIRG initiative is not only to improve the country's performance and ranking in the global indices, but also to leverage the indices as tools for driving systemic reforms and growth. In this context, Niti Aayog, as the nodal agency for MPI, has been responsible for constructing an indigenized index for monitoring the performance of states and union territories in addressing multidimensional poverty in India. In order to institutionalize this, Niti Aayog has constituted an interministerial MPI coordination committee, MPICC, including ministries and departments pertaining to areas such as health, education, nutrition, rural development, drinking water, sanitation, electricity, housing and urban development, among others. In 2023, Niti Aayog has published a report titled National Multidimensional Poverty Index, a Progressive Review. So lots of information and data and findings are there. This report offers a detailed analysis of the headcount ratio and intensity of multidimensional poverty at the state and union territory and district levels. It has also highlighted India's achievements in reducing multidimensional poverty between the years 2015-16 and 2019-21. So considering the significance of MPI in capturing the incidence and intensity of poverty in a multidimensional form, contribution of theoretical and empirical papers have been invited for this 106th annual conference of the Indian Economic Association, which is being held here at this premier university, University of Delhi, where we are now. So several subthemes have been set in it, and these subthemes actually were not exhaustive enough. It was suggested that scholars who are interested in writing papers on the topic, they can choose some other subtopics. So some of the subtopics that we suggested are MPI, global and Indian context. Number 2, MPI, performance at various levels. Number 3, MPI and performance in different dimensions. Number 4, MPI, nutrition, educational and health attainments and deprivations. Number 5, methodological and contextual issues. And number 6, MPI, welfare schemes and outcomes. So, as I was telling at the beginning, that I am looking forward to be informed, to learn many more aspects of this multidimensional poverty, especially as it is implemented in India. And today we are fortunate that we have these scholars from Niti Aayog, two scholars, distinguished panelists from Niti Aayog, and two very distinguished senior researchers are here, scholars are here. So let us learn to them. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Professor Bharti, for sharing with us the conceptual framework or foundation of multidimensional poverty line. I think it is logical that after listening to conceptual framework, we listen to actual estimation and what are the results from this MDPI. We have Dr. Uday Suri, my colleague from DPO, who was actually involved in the estimation of NDPI from DP side with UNDPT. So basically.
Respected Chair, Professor Raveshar, Member Niti Aayog, my distinguished colleagues in the dais, and
all my friends, many of whom I know, Professor Malhotra, Charan Singh ji, and other respected dignitaries present in this hall. At the outset, I would like to thank Indian Economic Association for giving this opportunity to me to present this. To talk about the multidimensional poverty index. So a lot of it has already been covered by Professor Bakchi, so I will not go into details. I would like to share a few things about what is given in the report and some background about this. Since I belong to this Planning Commission cadre, I joined here in 2010. I very well recall that when we came out with this poverty numbers sometimes in year 2011-12, that was based on the Tendulkar committee recommendation. There was a lot of hue and cry all across the country. अगर आप काफ़ी लोगों को अगर याद हो उन दिनों अगर वो टेलीविज़न अगर आप देखते थे तो ऑलमोस्ट हर चैनल पे इतनी बुराई होती थी प्लानिंग कमीशन की, ये 26 रुपये और 32 रुपये पर दिन का जो आप कट ऑफ निकाला हुआ है टू अराइव एट द नंबर ऑफ पुअर पीपल, दिस इज़ वेरी 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 लो. और 26 रुपये में तो 1 किलो भिंडी नहीं आती, ये नहीं आता, वो नहीं आता. तो इतना ज़्यादा उन दिनों शोर मच रहा था कि मॉनेटरी पॉवर्टी में काफ़ी सारी कमियां हैं विच नीड्स टू बी एड्रेस्ड. And subsequently, I think this new government came into being in 2014, and I think by and large, I think so far we have not come out with the monetary poverty because of the many issues, and including the kind of जो उनके अगेंस्ट जो बहुत सारे जो इश्यूज रेज किए गए उस समय. मुझे याद है जब मैं ऑफिस में होता था, करीब हजारों लोगों की भीड़ हमारे प्लानिंग कमीशन ऑफिस के बाहर खड़े हुए थे शोर मचाते हुए कि ये पॉवर्टी बिल्कुल गलत मेजर है, ठीक नहीं है. तो फिर हमने gradually we came down to the multi-dimensional poverty index. So as Mr. Bakchi also told, there is a global multidimensional poverty index, which is based on Alcaire Foster methodology, and which has been brought out by Oxford Policy and Human Development Initiatives along with UNDP. ये रिपोर्ट करीब 2010 से आ रही है, और and नीति ने डिसाइड किया कि we'll also adopt this multidimensional poverty sometime in the year around 2020 during the COVID times. The first report we came out with was in November 2021, which was based on National Family Health Survey 4. And subsequently, this new report, which have been latest brought out this year, that is based on NFHS 5. So, so globally methodology में इंडियन methodology में थोड़ा फर्क है कि globally 10 इंडिकेटर लिए जाते हैं, हमारे यहाँ 12 इंडिकेटर लिए जाते हैं, और ये 2 इंडिकेटर एडिशनल जो है मैटरनल हेल्थ और बैंक अकाउंट्स, बिकॉज वी फील दैट इट्स गवर्नमेंट्स प्रायोरिटी इज टुवर्ड्स these 2 indicators in addition to all the school, housing, sanitation, water, electricity, और जो करीब ये टोटल करीब 12 इंडिकेटर्स हैं. और मेथडोलॉजी बाय एंड लार्ज वही अल्कायर फॉस्टर मेथडोलॉजी हम लोग यूज़ करते हैं इसके अंदर. और जो कुछ मैं हाईलाइट्स करना, कुछ फाइंडिंग्स जो है लेटेस्ट रिपोर्ट के, वुड लाइक टू हाईलाइट बिफोर यू. सो आइडिया इज, सो बिकॉज दिस इज बेस्ड ऑन एनएफएचएस सर्वे, सो हम नॉर्मली जो पुरानी पॉवर्टी जो एस्टिमेट से मॉनिटरी पॉवर्टी, उसमें से स्टेट लेवल तक का डेटा होता था, उसमें स्टेट लेवल एज वेल एज सेग्रीगेटेड बिटवीन द रूरल एंड अर्बन. बट ये जो मल्टी डायमेंशनल पॉवर्टी जो रिपोर्ट हम लोगों ने निकाली है, सिंस दिस इज बेस्ड ऑन एनएफएचएस 5 डेटा, वी कैन ऑल्सो गिव द डेटा फॉर डिस्ट्रिक्ट वाइज. So we have data for all the 700 districts, and within each districts कितनी डेप्रीवेशन है. सो एक मॉनिटरी पॉवर्टी और इसमें ये फर्क है, यहाँ पे हम लोग डेप्रीवेशन मेजर किए जाते हैं, क्या लोगों के पास मकान है या नहीं है, उनके बिजली का कनेक्शन है या नहीं है, क्या उनके बच्चे स्कूल जाते हैं नहीं जाते, उनके घर पानी का कनेक्शन है या नहीं है. ऐसी करीब जो 12 के 12 जो मैंने बोले ये जो डेप्रीवेशन इंडिकेटर्स हैं. एंड देन वी मेजर व्हाट वाज द डेप्रीवेशन इन बेस्ड ऑन एनएफएचएस 4 एंड व्हाट इज द डेप्रीवेशन बेस्ड ऑन एनएफएचएस 5, और फिर पिछले 5 सालों में कितनी इंप्रूवमेंट हुई है. तो कुछ मैं हाईलाइट करना चाहूँगा. तो सबसे पहले तो देयर हैज बीन ए स्टीप डिक्लाइन इन मल्टी डायमेंशनल पॉवर्टी. 2015-16 में करीब 24.8, about 25% थी, 24.85% टू बी एग्जैक्ट. एंड 2019-21 जो एनएफएचएस 5 का जो पीरियड ऑफ सर्वे है, उसमें ये गिर के करीब 14.96% पे आ गई है. तो जो एसडीजी 1.2 जो गोल है, जो बोलता है कि पॉवर्टी को आधा करना है बिटवीन 2015 एंड 2030, सो हमने करीब 25 से 15 पे हम लोग आ गए हैं ऑलरेडी. और सिंस दिस डेटा वाज, मतलब मच ऑफ इट डेटा वाज अराउंड द कोविड पीरियड टाइम, बट आज हम प्रीटी श्योर हैं कि अगर आज 2023 के एंड में या 2024 में अगर हम ये सर्वे करवाएं, तो करीब करीब हमने ऑलरेडी पॉवर्टी आधी कर ली होगी. I think this is one of the biggest achievement of government of India, when most of the countries are struggling to meet their achieve their SDGs. In fact, more than 50% of SDG targets are fallen below the base level, or even and they are in very bad condition right now. But India is doing fairly much better compared to many other countries. दूसरा एक बहुत अच्छा अचीवमेंट इससे ये हुआ है, करीब 13.5 करोड़ लोग, they have come out of this multidimensional poverty during the last 5 years. So, and imagine this in situation where the world is struggling and people are not finding enough jobs, and I think poverty also globally is not been able to cut much, come down significant in any significant manner. In India, since we have been able to bring down poverty by about 135 million people, I think this is quite a big achievement. And और जितने all 12 indicators जो मैंने बोला थे, 12 indicators which is putting together forming multidimensional poverty index, all indicators have shown improvement. There is not even a single index where improvement has not been seen. And another very heartening feature is the rural poverty has come down much sharply compared to urban poverty. Rural poverty, which used to be about 33% in 2015-16, now it has come down to around 19%. And some of the states which have really stood out, like UP, Bihar, Madhya Pradesh, Odisha, and Rajasthan, they have recorded the highest number of MPI poor. In fact, Uttar Pradesh itself has about 3.4 crore people have come out of poverty in Uttar Pradesh alone. And all the improvement in nutrition, years of schooling, sanitation, all across the different indicators, there have been remarkable improvement. So why we went for MPI, I've already told. I will not go into more details because already time is short. So major advantage isme, as I said already, because since we have the statistics, all the detailed indicators for every district, and further drill down to every indicator. So if you want to see in the Palakkad district of Kerala, what is the situation and what are the areas where people are not doing, whether how many people do not have access to cooking fuel, how many people do not have a pakka house, how many people do not have a proper tap connection at their home. So we can easily work out, and based on that, we can always dovetail government schemes to where to target. So targeting is one area which I think is a very very important uses of MPI where we think, and I'm very happy that ministers are taken very seriously, and many ministers keep targeting their schemes based on this MPI calculation. There have been certain, I won't say criticism, but certain uh, members of academia or maybe some other media, they have highlighted certain issues in the report, including Professor Kundu, I think, but we are very much open to it. I think the next report, when we come out, we'll try to address each of these issues. But as I said, this is based on a internationally uh, established methodology, and I think currently about 100 countries are being ranked based on this MPI method, and more than 25 countries, they are also calculating their national multidimensional poverty index based on this methodology. So we are following this globally accepted norms, and some specific schemes of the government which has actually helped to bring down MPI include this Ujjwala scheme, where we have given more than 10 crore gas connections. And the Swachh Bharat Mission, we have so around 11.7 crore toilets have been built. Jal Jeevan Mission, about 12 crore tap connections have been given in the last 5-7 years. Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojana, about 4 crore houses have been built. Saubhagya for electricity, about 2.9 crore houses have been electrified. And about 90% households own more than two assets. And in financial inclusion, I think everybody knows this Pradhan Mantri Jan Dhan Yojana, about more than 50 crore accounts have been opened in the last few years. So these are the schemes. So we have multidimensional poverty index and the specific schemes which are targeting each of those parameters. I think going forward, I think we can look forward to further improvements in this index. We are very open to any suggestion from academia or anybody on the dais. And with these words, I thank you all for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you, Yogesh. Next, I invite Professor R. K. Mishra, the former director, Institute of Public Enterprise, Hyderabad.
No, I can. Thank you very much, Chair. I think it's a great opportunity to be presenting. I think when you are chairing the session, because you are known, I think, as a very eminent researcher. When I say this, I must thank Professor V.K. Malhotra, our former member secretary of the ICSSR, and also Dr. Madan, who have given me the opportunity to come and talk over here. I also see very eminent panelists here. Professor Kundu is there, of course. Professor Bagchi just spoke, and then Dr. Gopinath just went away. My interface with poverty started sometime in 1965. Professor Rajkrishna was our teacher at Rajasthan University. And I think not India, I think all started from the US. If you go back and see the literature, then in 1960 there was a big conference in the US, in Yale University, where a number of universities had come together. And for the first time, they discussed the problem of poverty in the US. And they were of the view that it was a very difficult and complex problem. Unless it is solved, I think US was sitting on a volcano. And I think that problem continues even today. But if you go further, I think then Danjekar and Rath, I think we could have mentioned, I think Danjekar and Rath, I think that was the boiling pot, I think, melting pot. And that created so much of furor over there. And if you go beyond, before that, it was Lohia and Nehru, I think. When Lohia talked, I think, on the floor of parliament, that, what you are giving, I think, your estimation of poverty is far away, I think, from the reality. I think India is a country where poor people live. Of course, they try to counter that, but that was not, I think, in the right spirit, I think. As Yogesh has just mentioned, I think they should have accepted them and should have, I think, told that yes, the problem is there and we'll try to overcome that. And of course, then, we had the professor from Delhi University. They took, I think, work on that and a lot of things were done. But what I would say is that this is a great step taken by our Niti Aayog. And I hold some praise for the Niti Aayog. And also, I think, for the consensus. Because when we talk of poverty and when we talk of income poverty, we abuse, I think, the term poverty as such. because to define, I think, poverty in terms of a few dollars, I think that is demeaning, I think, not only the global citizens but especially those who live in a country like India, which has all kind of all kind of resources. And therefore, I think there is a need, I think, to have brought in the concept of multidimensional poverty. Now, given that, again, I would praise, I think, the Niti Aayog, in the sense that Niti Aayog has taken the step. It didn't stop, I think, with what Amartya Sen talked, I think, way back. He talked of functioning approach, and he also talked of the capability. But then, as Yogesh has just talked, Oxford group and UNDP, I think they further worked on that. They had the global kind of report. But I think, harmonizing that report with the conditions that we have in India, I think is a very, very difficult task. And let us also agree, the kind of data we have built up in our country, the data are susceptible, I think, for this or that kind of, interpretation. Now, given that, I would say that the report very brilliantly, I think, the Niti Aayog report very brilliantly points out that we have gone too far. We are on the right track, and when we relate it to the SDGs and what has been told, I think, global fora and also on the floor of our parliament, we have recorded, I think, phenomenal success. Even I think with COVID, etc., if COVID would not have been there, I think we would have achieved our target, I think, far before. But even with that constant, I think we have made a big progress. Now the question is that why we should have a rethink, I think. And you remember, I think, that in 1975 the Nobel Prize, it went to a Filipino, Asian drama. And the Asian drama, I think, one sentence, it always remains in my mind because, it's so close to the reality. Poverty anywhere is a danger to prosperity everywhere. And therefore, we may say that it is a common problem, that it is a routine kind of thing. It is not a routine kind of thing. It is not a common problem. It is a very serious problem. And if you do not understand the implications of this problem, and do not come out with right strategies, we don't work continually, I'm sure that I think will create a lot of dissensions, I think, and problems in our country. Therefore, I'll say that poverty anywhere is a danger to prosperity everywhere. That is very true in our country. With the economic liberalization 1991, we have achieved so much. But at the same time, I think we are also sitting on the brink of some problems. And therefore, I think we have been quoting different kind of economic growth works, right from Rogers and Rodan and Hendricks, etc. Growth and development, they have to go hand in hand. If we have only lopsided view, we are only pushing one agenda of growth and growth and growth. How many people will lead, I think, that team of growth? Only a few. And those who are not leading, I think they'll be left behind. And that's happening, I think, in our country also, and that's happening in different states also. There is a big chasm, I think, between some states and states, I think, which are far behind. And we need to understand better poverty and more meaningful ways to quantify it. I think that is the work that MDP index, which Niti Aayog has been done. But as we will see later, why we should have rethink. There is, I think, scope. I think there is a room, I think, for furthering success on economic indicators. And also, I think thinking of bringing in new indicators. I'm happy when Yogesh told that instead of 9 or 10, we have now taken 12 over here. But then there is a question of, I think, replacing those indicators also. Some of those indicators have to be kept on, I think, should be kept on getting replaced because multidimensional poverty is not a static concept. It is, I think, a very dynamic concept. And then also, I think, when we talk about that, I had a long guidance from Malhotra ji also. One or two very important things, especially one, I think, disasters in this country. Every day, I think, one or the other state is visited by disasters. And we achieve everything, and in one morning when we just wake up, we find that nothing is there, everything is lost, I think. And therefore, I think one very important element that I'll place before you, I think disasters like that, I think we should be bringing in new factors into consideration. And we see, I think, 50% of the coastal population all around the world that is facing disasters. In our country also, that is happening. And therefore, I think when we talk of poverty packages and poverty approaches, there is a need that we also think more on fresh approach to disaster risk reduction. These are the things I think Yogesh has just pointed out. Very, very important. All are very important. I think nutrition, we had a discussion. There is a good paper from RIS on nutrition, which has come out only day before yesterday. Nutrition at what level, to which children, at what age, in which state. These are the issues I think we try to quantify, but in the when to quantify, we just not be overlooking the specifics I think which are there in different states and different kind of people, because when we talk about that, an urbanite nutrition needs are different, as we have just seen. For a tribal person, nutritional needs are different. For a villager, I think somewhere, I think nutrition needs are different. So, lot of work, I think it has to go. And therefore, one thing that when we talk about the gaps, I would suggest that the MDP should not be taken only as an approach to quantify, I think, the poverty. We must, I think, set up big research groups. And these research groups, I think, when you talk of Oxford and Harvard, I think, you see, Harvard University's budget is more than the budget of 3 states of our country. One university's budget is more than that. They put immense money, I think, into research. So we do, I think, research, yes, but can we further go into depth? And also, I think, reality also, we should also be going into reality. So these are the things. And when we relate it to SDGs, as Yogesh has just pointed out, we have done very well on poverty head count ratio. It has come down drastically. We have achieved we have taken out, I understand, about 13.5 crore people out of the poverty net. But we follow Chinese approach? I was in China, and before I think COVID itself, they had achieved I think so much. Though there is poverty number of people, they are still there. What is their approach of poverty reduction? Their approach of poverty reduction is very simple. The approach is that lift and stop. In our case, what is happening is like population. We lift, I think, people out of the poverty trap, but we are not stopping, I think. Can we stop them there? If we do that, then I think our achievements will be fantastic, I think. As it has just been pointed out that this is a snapshot of multidimensional poverty in our country, and you see, I think it has reduced. I think on all the counts. Then when you talk of disparities across rural and urban areas, again you find there is a drastic improvement, and there has been greater success, I think, in the rural areas. Maybe I think because of our Prime Minister's vision of Gram Swaraj. I think Gram Swaraj have been holding, I think, this up. This is a very important thing which is coming out is that big industries are not going to change the scenario of this country. If you have to change, I think, the strategy, we will have to depend, I think, on the local production, local outcomes. Prime Minister has been talking about that day in and day out, and that the Ghanaian economy has to be revived, I think, here. And we have seen, I think, some states, we call them Bimaru states, I think. That is a Bimaru mind. When you call a Bimaru state, that is a Bimaru mind, because when you talk of Bimaru states, you also see what kind of contribution they have made. If they would not have been there, you could not have seen steel, you could not have seen coal, I think, you could not have seen the petroleum, I think. So when you talk of Bihar, you talk of UP, you talk of Assam, you should know if these states would not have produced minerals, petroleum, gas, I don't think, I think so-called states which have been doing very well would have done much more, I think. Now, given that you have seen tremendous reduction is there in states, which were very, very poor. There are states which are middling states also. Then there are states which have still to do more. And the lesson here is very simple. The lesson is that can be revisited, I think, as Yogesh has just told. Can we revisit these strategies? One thing, can we spend more time with people at the state level? I think I have been working, I think I don't, but MOPSI. I worked, I think there's a section in the MOPSI which was dealing with this. And what we found is that there was very, if it was not a lip service, I think, certainly I think some states, they are deeply ingrained, I think, collecting data and also accepting the philosophy of poverty and multi-dimensional poverty and also SDGs. There are some states, I think, where the network, I think, is very, very poor. I don't want to give the names of these states. coming to natural disasters, I thought that we should have natural disasters also as a part of it, and we find 50% of this country is visited by natural disasters. Now, given that I will not have much time on that, given that why we should not be including, and there are different kinds of disasters. I think one or the other kind of disasters, they are being seen every now and then. The impact on daily lives, landslides, and they also create lack of opportunities. They create floods, and economic and social impact of these disasters are there. They negatively affect local economy, hazards, obstruct participation in socio-economic activities, etc. So this is one thing, and there are many other things also on that. So I will not spend much time on that. But coming to the success of economic indicators, what can we do? I think so. Uh, Maybe I think can we go to the schooling? I think health vigil at the school level. PDS, can we further strengthen our public distribution system? Can we have community hospitals? Can we check the dropout rates? NEP talks about that, but what can we do? I think that has got to be seen. Eliminating biogas consumption, wet latrines. I think if you go into the Singapore's economic development and read Mahbubani's contribution, who I think that was the first book, I think, why how Asia is turning around. And in that book, he said that in India's economic revolution, it started not in 1991, not in 1985, but India's economic revolution started in 1960, when for the first time when for the first time we conducted we went away from wet latrines, I think, to dry latrines. I think that was the first thing, that changed, I think, India's fortunes. Financial inclusion, of course, we have talked. Can we have more of microfinance? I think that can be another thing. I think we can work on that more. Can we have different kind of bundles? We have only one kind of bundle. Why can't we have different kind of income groups are there for different kind of income groups? Because poverty, I think, for different kind of income groups has to be defined. And some countries, I think, even UNDP and Oxford Group has also been saying that maybe can we transit from red to green? There are some states which are in the red. Can we go from red to green? Can we social system? I think this point was made by our friend from Tamil Nadu. Now I have lived for about 30 years in the south, and let me tell you, I don't want to put this in terms of south and north, but unless we overcome the social, I don't say we can revolutionize or we can change the structure, but the social system like caste, I think, creed, like religion, I think, especially caste, I will say, caste is the major constant. And can we do something, if not banishing the caste, can we do something by which things can change? He quoted the case of Tamil Nadu. In Tamil Nadu, social development movement started right from 1929, and then you can see, I think, how things have changed. Even economic strategies started in different way. In each district, what Prime Minister says now, each district, when Mr. Venkataraman was the president in 70 itself, in each district, a specific industry was developed. So can we think, I think, can we look into what is that very specific to that district? Can we concentrate, something on that? Now the question is that what more we can do here on this index. One, I think, point has been made very clearly, that we can, I think, strengthen the data team, the kind of people who are collecting data. Can we train them more? I think. Can we have? I think we know. I think how what kind of data sometimes are collected. We know about that. Can we make our data more authentic? I think that's the question. So can we reach out? One. Number two is that can we have different packages? I think from different areas of our country. That may be the second thing. And also, I think, uh, can we think of some global levels? If some countries have been able to cross this so rapidly, like, I don't say China as such, then can we, I think, also, can we also bring in those stories? I'll just take half a minute and then I'll finish, I think. Uh, 1 minute? No. Data availability, then selection of indicators and weights. I think we have to keep on changing cultural and contextual relevance and relative poverty inequality, and also urban-rural divide and policy implementation, and then neglect of interconnectedness of deprivations. Interconnectedness. I think we can look into that. Finally, I'll just say one thing: is that can we have more number of people now? Niti Aayog has done this, but did he percolate it down? If this is a very serious effort, then we should democratize this also. And when it's a democratization, that means I think it should get widely discussed. Maybe this may become a sort of national agenda for research. I'll say that the kind of work Niti Aayog has done is the first-rate social science research work. Because the question is that we are putting money into research, but what kind of research we are doing? And this is, I think, a policy-based research. The only thing is that MDP doesn't tell us which kind of policy we should promote and which kind of policy we should, I think, go slow about that. So we can simplify things for the policymakers. But let me congratulate Niti Aayog for this very, very grand effort. Thank you.
Ravi, before I request Professor Vital to do, I just want to make one announcement, mainly to keep the flock together, that at the end of the session, we will have sufficient time for question answers. So there's the incentive to stay back at the end of the session. You may ask whatever question you want to ask to the panelists you are here with us. So we have what we say, last but not the least. This applies actually in this particular case. We have Professor Kundu. He's published on his views on MDPI. He has published in newspaper, in Deccan Herald. He also published a piece with Dr. Mohanan in Economic and Physical Weekly. In fact, to be honest, Professor Kundu, I started taking interest in MDPI after I just read your pieces. Before that, I just kept the report to the shelf that you keep doing so many reports. This is just one of those, let it go to the shelf. But after you discussed with me and after I read your work, I really got interested into reading more and more about it. So thank you for that also. I am sure that everyone in the hall will be benefited like me from your views on MDPI.
Thank you, sir, for your kind words.
Honorable Chairperson, it's your presence which is making me nervous, and that of Dr. Charan Singh and Dr. Yogesh Shuri. Not even 72 hours ago, I talked about exactly the same thing under the same chairperson. So, Ramesh Chandji, आपने शोले कितने बार देखा? I was discussing this issue with Dr. Malhotra. उन्होंने कहा कि शोले के जगह आप रामपुर के शोले कर दीजिए जो रीमेक हुआ है. So let me see how I can improve on it. You see, coming to Delhi University makes me very, very sentimental. Before about 52 years, I entered the campus, overwhelmed, and first professor I met, I attended. I had deficits, academic deficits because of small town in Madhya Pradesh. So I started attending Professor Amartya Sen's lectures, MA classes. So in first lecture, he comes and tells us that, look, you are measuring poverty by head count ratio. You're talking about Zandekar and Rath. I came from Gokhale Institute. So I knew simple formula, number of percentage of people below poverty line. He said, but we are not measuring the depth of poverty. Somebody can be very much below poverty line, somebody can be just below poverty line. So if you only measure the number, the government can reduce the number by lifting the people who are just below the poverty line. So measure the intensity of poverty and depth of poverty. And he proposed an index, which is known as Sen's Index of Poverty, which measures intensity of poverty, depth of poverty, not just the head count ratio. If you look at Niti Aayog's work, multidimensional poverty index is a product of two things. One, head count ratio, multiplied by the intensity of poverty. So that I thought was a very important thing that Sen brought into the literature. And he proposed two axioms. He had this axiomatic framework of welfare economics. And he said these two axioms or two principles must be satisfied by any index of poverty. What were the two axioms? One, if any person who is below poverty line, a person who is poor, his or her situation improves, poverty at the national level must go down. Every individual. If one individual also who is below poverty line, not what happens to, Birlas. If a person below poverty line improves her position, overall poverty must go down. That is the first axiom. And second is, if a richer person or a better off person transfers money to a poorer person, even if that person who is giving is below poverty line, doesn't matter. But if that person is giving money to the another person who is much below poverty line, again, redistribution justice should come in and poverty should go down. And what we did in the classroom is really, we produced the material which came in Economic and Political Weekly next week on Sen's Index of Poverty, which satisfied these two axioms and showed that all the other indicators of measuring poverty do not satisfy the basic requirements. Now, what I did, and again, I'm doing the same, I will propose three axioms, and I really want your opinion on that. Tell me whether those axioms are valid and any index of poverty should satisfy them or not. Now, if once you say yes, they are reasonable, then we will open the box and see what Suri Saab has done, whether that index satisfies those three axioms. So please be careful before you agree with me that these, well, it's not Suri Saab, I just wanted it out, he's a good friend. It is the global index. Savina Alkire is also a good friend. So we keep on talking about Savina Alkire is the person behind this Oxford Multidimensional Index. So first axiom is that if, again, the same which the UN also talks about, no one should be left behind. If any person who is poor or below poverty cutoff, how is poverty being measured? 12 indicators, and you have deprivation weightages. A person who is deprived in all the 12 will have a deprivation score of 1, right? And if a person has a deprivation score of 0.2, then the person is not poor, because it is 0.33, which is the cutoff point. Again, the passing mark which is given in the schools and universities. If somebody's poverty score is 0.5, the person is poor. 0.7, much more poor. 0.8, and 1 would be the highest score. That is how poverty is being calculated. Now, if anyone below poverty line improves, multidimensional poverty should go down, or any poverty measure should go down. That is one. You would think this is a reasonable axiom which Amartya Sen proposed. Second axiom, be careful now. Suppose you have choices. Ramesh Chandji, we have choices of aspirational districts. Let us say we are starting a school in an aspirational district. There are two aspirational districts. One is Dehradun, which is the best among the aspirational districts, and second is Kalahandi or Balasore. Very backward. The deprivation in Balasore would be 0.8, 0.9, and deprivation in Haridwar will be 0.5 or 0.4. Which one should we choose? Should we choose, suppose there are two persons, A and B. A is extremely poor and B is just marginally poor. Whom should we benefit so that poverty index goes down? Should we benefit the poorest? Should we invest in Balasore? We are starting just one school. You are not really elevating all poverty. We are having some facility. Deprivation is being reduced from 0.9 to 0.8 or 0.6 to 0.5. Which one is better? Sen's index says that reducing from 0.9 to 0.8 is a better, because the fellow is much more deprived. 0.6 to 0.5, okay, this is also the same amount of decline, but more deprived people, if they are benefited, that should be counted as better. That is the second axiom. And third axiom is, if deprivation in health goes up. Let's say child mortality rate, we have 18 years, that's what we have taken in our report. If death rate goes up, if the dropout rate goes up, that means number of children attending school has gone down. If the woman's health, Surisa talked about, is basically the woman getting the care at the time of pregnancy. Suppose that also worsens, the number of women who are getting facility goes down. Should it happen that multidimensional poverty should also go down? If things have become worse in education, health, the multidimensional poverty should also show a decline. These are the three axioms which I proposed 72 hours ago. I have not yet published it. You will find multidimensional poverty index fails in all the three. First, suppose there is a household where 3 children are not going to school this year. Next year, 2 of them start going to school. What happens? The household remains poor. So the poverty does not go down. So 2 children attending the school does not help. You see, I'm saying suppose there are 3 deliveries which were not attended by antenatal prenatal care, but next year only 1. But even then the household remains poor. Multidimensional poverty index, as we discussed, is based on household. Household is the unit, not the individual. I was talking to, like Mishraji, in one meeting to a very senior friend in Niti Aayog. I said, Niti should do this. Niti has this responsibility. It's a wonderful job. And we are all very proud of the work, particularly multidimensional poverty index. But this friend of mine in the Niti said, एक दिन मैं सड़क पे जा रहा था, देखा एक स्कूटर के पीछे लिखा हुआ है, don't follow me, I am also lost. He said, well, नीति के बारे में भी ये कहना कि सब कुछ ज्ञान वही है, everything is there. Niti also is lost. I really like that clarity that I got. And I want to mention, आपके नेशनल पॉवर्टी इंडेक्स के मेथोडोलॉजी सेक्शन को देखिए. चेयरमैन, वाइस चेयरमैन नीति आयोग ने कहा बिल्कुल हाउसहोल्ड इज द यूनिट. 4.2 of the report mentions it is the individual on which we are calculating. It is not so. As I am saying, suppose a woman did not have the support medical system for the time of delivery. Not only that she is poor, her husband is poor, her father-in-law is poor, everybody is poor. If you fail in one indicator, the lady may be failing in that because she did not get, but the entire household is described as poor. But 4.4 in the methodology section corrects that, says no, it is household level. So there is small little, clarifications which people like you should be able to provide to the Niti Aayog also, saying that ye thoda sa aap improve kar lijiye. Now, second point is, should we target the poorest district like Kalahandi, Balasore or Dehradun? They are both aspirational districts. The point is, if you reduce the poverty level from 0.8 to 0.7, reduction is only 0.1. And 0.6 to 0.5, reduction is 0.1. You are adding them up. You are not squaring them. And that is why multidimensional poverty index is indifferent. कि आप सबसे poor को लेते हैं या जो marginally poor है उसको लेते हैं. So that is one problem which Sen tried to modify, but nonetheless, I have a feeling, I talked to Sabina about it. He said, shouldn't there be some weightages? And she immediately pointed out, there is another index which she has proposed, but that is in the theoretical literature. He said it is very difficult to take it to the global level. So I understand the difficulties here. But nonetheless, as I said, that multidimensional poverty index will go down whether you target the poorest or just below poverty line. Third point, you will be surprised, you will say, is it possible? If the death rate of the children go up, the dropout rate, school attendance rate for the children go down, how can multidimensional poverty index will also not show an increase? It is because, you see, child death rate may go up. The attendance, the medical support for the woman may go down. But if the number of deliveries have gone down, if the number of children have gone down, poverty will go down. Compare two countries. I don't want to name India and China because that is a sensitive issue. Say A and B. In a country E, child death rate is higher, child non-attendance in school is higher, woman getting facilities, not getting facilities is higher, but number of deliveries are less, number of children are less because there is a demographic transition. So obviously, the country which does not have children or does not have pregnancy cases will have lower poverty, even if among the children who are born, the death rate is very high. These are three axiomatic issues. I must tell you, after my lecture in Professor Sen's class, I raised a question there. And after about 7 years, I wrote a piece and sent it to Professor Amartya Sen, which was called Impossibility Theorem for Measuring Poverty. Basically, this is published in International Economic Review. What I showed in that paper, that no continuous function of the poverty level income can satisfy three logical requirements. He had put two, I put an additional one and showed that all continuous functions of poverty, including Amartya Sen's index, fails to satisfy that. He read it and he not only wrote to me, he also wrote to international journals that mathematically this theorem is correct, but operationally this is too stringent. It freezes the economists from doing any action. If you are, the message that I got from him during my studentship with him is that economists should not be frozen to inaction by theoretical purity. You want to maintain your theoretical purity? You want to maintain your Pareto optimal position? He said, when Rome was burning, Nero was happy playing his music, and that was also a Pareto optimal situation. A theoretical economy will say, sorry, I don't want to intervene. He said, this is very important. The two economists of South Asia, Mahbub al Haq and Amartya Sen, brought in multidimensionality in measuring development. And he said that, it is better to be slightly imprecise theoretically, but it is important to be useful. And that is the reason why when I was working out composite indices in the 70s and 90s, many of my colleagues in JNU said, you and your supervisor will go to jail for adding up fertilizer consumption with literacy rate. He said, how can you do that? But when Amartya Sen announced in a big gathering in India International Center that per capita income is a vulgar index, it adds up milk and alcohol on the basis of market prices, which is absolutely absurd. And he said, you can't take market prices. So GDP has also problems. So please, my submission, therefore, Suri Saab, it's an index which we have worked out. As you pointed that people were criticizing, it's a unidimensional index, only income poverty is not poverty. There are all kinds of other deprivation, education, health. And first time this has come out. I know that there are issues. Some people have said, oh, what is this 12 indicator I can replace every indicator. It is very easy to criticize any indicator. But since there is a global framework, it's not true that all the countries are having 10 indicators, by the way. In West Asia, where I was responsible for the multidimensional poverty report, we had again 12 indicators. And I must tell you, we had one indicator, which is FGM, female genital mutilation. And the whole of Arab League countries opposed it. He said, no, this cannot be it's a cultural factor. And we had to fight it out. And he said, no, this index has to be taken in. So the last sentence, if I have just one more minute, I would say the biggest challenge for carrying multidimensional poverty index, and I personally believe that yes, it has utility, it gives district level figures, you can use it for allocation purposes, for monitoring, for for really assessing the performance. But the biggest problem is how do you protect these indicators from vested interest? Ms. Shazab, you pointed out that we can change the indicators, flexibility should be there, dynamism should be there. These are very beautiful words, but you know what can happen. Dr. Ramesh Chand, you also said yesterday, 72 hours back, that well, some indicators we should drop, we can take. Of course we should do that. I understand. If everybody has a mobile phone, it loses its importance as an indicator of poverty. But if you really allow that to happen, you can always have political vested interest. Certain regime comes up and says, sorry, I have pushed this factor, why don't you remove this and put that? So I have a feeling that the greatest responsibility of the Niti Aayog is to protect the sense of indicator. I'm not saying they should not change, but there has to be an institutional mechanism which really decides what are the indicators which should be taken in and taken out. We all know that the indicator of banking has been criticized, saying that, look, having a bank account with no transaction for the poor people, how does it matter? You're making it equal to drinking water and sanitation. But nonetheless, I mean, that such criticism should be avoided. And what I was arguing all the time in Beirut when I was interacting with the Arab League people, there are 5 institutional systems which we had to satisfy before we can carry forward the indicators. So in India, I personally believe this is the responsibility of the Niti Aayog. Again, we trust that they should be able to design such institutional framework which does not allow vested interest to intervene and change the indicators as per their convenience. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Kundu. As always, very stimulating and also sometimes provocative. So we will see if we can respond to some of the criticism, or rather I would say constructive criticism of MDB, which you have offered. And that is the purpose of the debate. I take it like this, because we have read, I think, most of our social sciences. No evolution of idea will not happen without your debate, and there is antithesis for every thesis. For every antithesis, there is an anti-antithesis. So Hegelian idea that there has to be opposition to one idea. So we take your comments purely in that way. So it is now open for comment, and fortunately we have 30 minutes. So we start from this row and then we go back to Professor Johnson. And anybody take mic to Professor Johnson? Yeah, yeah. We will come to you, sir. Yeah. We will come. Yeah, we will come to second one.
Professor Kundu, it was really a very mesmerizing intervention that you had. I was deeply mesmerized when you spoke 72 hours back, and by then we were running out of time, and today we have time. So one most important question that I had for you, and that's a learning for all of us. We as economists do bring in cultural and social issues in our decision making, and that plays an important role in public health. As you know, that economists are basically critical, they work in the critical economy. I just wanted to know what was the reason that you insisted that a cultural factor, irrespective of the cultural factor, that variable should be used. Thank you.
I am Professor Rajalakshmi from Madras University, Chennai, Tamil Nadu. Just we had the session on both the disaster as well as poverty. And I want to ask one question and tell something from output from you, which I can deliver there in Tamil Nadu. Today, due to climatic change, we have a disaster rainfall amounting to 35 centimeters in Chennai. And in South Tamil Nadu, 95 to 98 centimeters in 2 cities, and also focused on 2 particular villages. So, what type of disaster effect on poverty? And we know Tamil Nadu, by the public distribution and other system, the poverty eradication has been quite a lot, and poverty issue is also left. But this sudden emergence of a disaster like this, what may be the percentage of the low income group and even the higher income groups? All the cars are lost, 15 lakhs, 25 lakhs cars are lost. And even what are the ingredients in the house? Plasters, the houses are gone. So like that, they are huge disaster. Have you ever mentioned, you can quote somewhere outside India also, this type of disaster? what will be the ratings, sir, and what we can do for. So the policymakers, we can tell something that we are also in the public domain. We can tell something, and I want to use the expertise of this.
I am Dr. Prakash from Vivekananda College, Chennai. I would first appreciate the Niti Aayog for taking such a wonderful exercise of going by multidimensional poverty, and applause for them. And both of them have given a very clear vision on how to go about. One from Samisra and another by Hindu. I accept the views of Mishra by saying that when we eradicate some poverty, we have to stop it. We should not continue with that assistance. That will help us to save a lot of resources. That's really valid. And another important high-tide thinking should be the caste system should be taken away. It's something like we cannot progress in the economic reforms, or the success will not come in economic reforms without political reforms. Today morning I heard on the reforms basis, I mean the ethical basis. So that should be on a policy. That should be legalized. That should be. We should bring legislation, constitutional change. We should. There should be a new Ambedkar to see a new, because we cannot go by old laws. The new laws has to come according to the current situation, and things should change. That is one of the very important reforms. If we want to succeed in economic reforms, be very clear. So all sort of reforms should come. We should not get rid of the old reform, laws, outdated laws, outdated caste system. We should be very pragmatic. So this is my view, and the multidimensional power, as Kundu rightly said, all dimensions, we have to look at from all dimensions. In a pragmatic way, not theoretical way. So, thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Very interesting panel. I have 2-3 issues. First is that we poverty measurement is a very complex issue. Whether we do unidimensional type of measurement of poverty, and now we are moving from unidimensional to multidimensional poverty. And Niti Aayog has done. But my point here is that these different kinds of poverty, unidimensional as well as multidimensional, they have different sets of parameters. So, do you think that we should have both simultaneously for the policymakers? For example, most of these multidimensional indicators based on the policies, like there are many missions and policies. They are increasing the multidimensional poverty. But what about the income of the people? So this is one aspect that should be have, but now we stop raising unidimensional poverty. So for policy making, should we have both concept of poverty? And later on we start more about poverty within multidimensional also. But right now this is one issue. Second is the issue of measurement. I don't think I have gone through all these things. My student also got training with Sabina and Foster how to measure. But when it is cut off, 1.5. What is the basis of it? Suppose if we keep it at 0.2, then poverty percentage will go up. So what is the logic of taking that the household should be deprived in 1/3 of the indicator that it will be counted in the hands of. Third is that, and our friend Vishnaji flexibility, and Kundalini also warned about this flexibility. For example, from political economy point of view, if more indicators are included, that counts in fact in the national level when at the global level, when we and more and then the comparison becomes the problem. But if in next it should to the political economy, and some of the such indicators are included, which make the poverty situation fast decline. What will be the consequences of such kind of flexibility? So there should some debate should be done how to capture the multidimensional poverty in some stable indicators, so that we should have at least 10 to 20 years stable indicators to measure and compare the multidimensional poverty. Right? Yes.
In India, wage gap is a critical issue. Many Indian women receive less wage. So, as a policy maker, how can balance the wage gap in India? Because I know suggest that in individual terms, India is a huge wage gap. And second, in modern time, data suggests that the malnutrition is still increased after COVID-19. But during COVID-19, Government of India provide 5 kg food grain. Then what is the relation between the food grain and malnutrition during the COVID-19? And third, as a student of economics, we are waiting for census data and when it published. Thank you.
I am Dr. Tulasi Rajan from Madurai Kamaral University. While calculating this multidimensional index, this freebies given by the state that are equal. So many states are giving too much of freebies, and monthly cash they are giving for the ladies 2,002 again 6,000 like that they are giving, and they are getting this Prime Minister's 6,000 rupees also. So all these freebies are not calculated in multidimensional index, and also in time form. Time every time they are getting some kind of fees, freebies like that from the government. And in Tamil Nadu, you take in every temple, daily 50 people are given food. And in the schools also, breakfast, lunch is given to all the students. All the students starting from the LKG to the 12th. So these freebies given available to the household is not coming under this multidimensional index calculation. So you have to give some kind of weightage and you have to calculate that. Then only you get a true picture of poverty in any state or any district or any village.
I have only two requests. The multidimensional poverty concept can be looked at non-economic factors. One is on crime economics. Last 2-3 decades, the crime economics, that means economic crimes in India is increasing. There is a causation between poverty and crime. Why crime is more important is the last 2-3 decades, the investment or outlay on police administration and judicial administration is increasing. So indirectly it gets in. Second concept is media economics. how mass media and social media are looking at poverty as a concept, in a real sense or as a cinematic sense. How we can include their presentation, their views in their policy frame. Thank you.
To the panelists to respond to whatever question has been raised. So we start with Mishra ji and go in that sequence.
Thank you, Chair. I thank again Professor Malhotra ji who gave this opportunity because we went thought of an item, doesn't appear but which affects everybody on earth. But we are not concerned, I think, with everybody, but we thought that we must bring it in the context of India. And we are visited you, that we are very frequently visited. And whatever Niti Aayog does, whatever our government does, I think, we just wash off, I think. And therefore, I think this disaster management, that's a good thing. We must bring points like disasters in the states. I think how frequently they are visited, whether their property has been destroyed, I think, by disasters, did they lose their cattle, etc. Because that is the way I think they can get, their living, I think. From cattle they get their living, from the food they get their living, from the crop they get their living, I think. The house is the shelter, I think, for them. If they don't have a house, they cannot go to, shops to get any credit, I think. No, nothing can come to them from the bank. Therefore, you can see what is happening in Chennai now, I think. For the last couple of days, they are not able to move from one house to another house. We saw in Assam, I think, Guwahati and other areas, entire Arunachal areas, and in some of the states, water went up to 2 to 3, 25 to 50 feet up. So we must understand, we must go to root cause. I think, as somebody told, I think, it's not a question of solving the problem of today. We must also have a long-term perspective. Therefore, when we talk about multidimensional policy, one, I think, can be a short-term approach, the medium-term approach, and also, I think, the long-term approach. So I don't say that we should bring in as many things as possible and make, I think, the entire exercise much more complicated, difficult, and unacceptable, I think, on the global scale. But at the same time, we must, I think, do it in a way which, addresses, to our concern. So, and caste system. Today, I think Tamil Nadu and South has developed, let us accept it. Let us accept it. They have developed because caste system is, has been put under this. How you do this? I don't say. I think there is a good paper in Times when they go to Denmark. When you say go to Denmark, what does it mean? When you say go to Denmark, I not have imagination. They don't have in their family school. What is your mother's name? What is your father's name? What is your caste? These things don't appear. So when you have to change education, I think, when you think what is your caste, what is your mother's name, what is your father's name, do you have bacha? It's back into the world. And therefore, Amar Sen, what Amar Sen told us, enabling factor, I think. When a child is born in a poor man's house, or is born, I don't want to say whose house. Whether a child has committed a crime in getting born in the house of a person where he runs a food and sleep, he should have the same opportunity as which anyone has. And it is the duty, I think, of the society and the state that we enable him to education, enable him to living, give him the skill. That's what the Prime Minister has been saying. Give him the skill, I think. We have to have our policies such that give people a very fair chance to grow. And all of us know that many of us, we are in this position because we got better opportunities. Not that others, they are not that good as we are. So we have to think, I think, if we can bring, I think, societal aspect, now we welfare economics we call it. Why? Because economics, why did Adam Smith talk about welfare economics? Why did he talk about basic, that traditional economics or even I think economics which came later, or till Amar Sen. Welfare economics is a pure science, but economics that integrating society will not accept. That is social science research comes under. Thank you so much, I think. Dr. Malhotra, who initiated several such projects in the social sciences stream. And he brought the social sciences very close to so-called sciences. I was in UNESCO meeting. Very well here. In fact, continuously we have done made it very clear unless you cultivate, I think, interest of scientists in social sciences, the country cannot change.
I think to improve the situation, two three things are very much necessary. One is political will, second is good governance, and third one is providing opportunity for everyone.
Then I I should go by protocol.
Let me stand here. The most important question that has been raised by Dr. Charan Singh, that in the measurement of multidimensional poverty, should we take off the cultural factors, which we did with a lot of difficulty, because in one meeting, UNESCO told us, you must respect the local culture. You cannot just bulldoze with some global value system. Issue is, in Sati also was a cultural factor. Gender discrimination in India is a cultural factor. The woman should eat out after the husbands have eaten. There are many cultural factors. As long as those cultural factors do not come into conflict with basic human rights. And that's why we showed that the percentage of women undergoing female genital mutilation goes down with age, with education, with level of income. So obviously it's a deprivation. So we had to fight a lot. And that is the reason why, the cultural factors, Guru Nanak ji said, Sai itna dijiye jame kutumb samay. This is the first definition of poverty given in India. Sai itna dijiye jame kutumb. Kutumb is not your family, but there are other dependents. मैं भी भूखा ना रहूं, साधु ना भूखा जाए. Charan Singh ji in the last meeting said, my sadhu जो आता है मेरे घर में उसको साथ एक drink भी चाहिए. The point is, what is sadhu's requirement? That has to be not culturally determined. If you're talking about poverty, you have to. Charan Singh ji, by the way, he doesn't drink, he doesn't touch alcohol at all. Right, whatever it is. But when you have to define, sorry, I'm taking a little longer time. I'm using your liberty. So basically, you have to say culturally जो भी हो, लेकिन basic minimum need जो है, biological क्या है, health के लिए कितना है, कितना करना पड़ रहा है, कोई दो guest आ जाए, and I think that is very much included in Manas's calculation, that if somebody comes from outside, how much do you need? So, other thing is this caste factor. I have a study on discrimination in India. I've studied discrimination, caste-based discrimination, gender-based discrimination, which is the highest, and religion-based discrimination. And we do find that in the rural areas, caste-based discrimination is very high, much higher than religion-based discrimination, whereas in the urban areas, religion-based discrimination is higher. And gender discrimination is rampant, both in the rural and urban areas. That's a separate thing. But my question is, issues like disaster, environment, and caste system which affects everyone, they cannot be part of the multidimensional poverty index calculation. The whole calculation is based on individual level data and household level data. Unless the environmental factor, how do you bring climate change here? It is not there. We have to keep climate change consideration in a different platform. Caste system में क्या हो रहा है? How many people are getting arrested? How many people are doing that? That unless individuals are brought in, you cannot include in multidimensional poverty. Well, I think caste discrimination is a very, very important thing, but really you can't build in the household level calculation. Finally, the point that was raised, what indicator should we choose? Of course it is subjective. You can demolish this 12 and build another 12. But I think these 12 have been identified based on the human development framework. There is global acceptability. And the question was raised, why 33%? Why 0.33 is the cutoff? You make it 0.2. You have more people, you make it 0.1. Anyone who has deprivation more than 0.1 is poor. And if you read Surjit Bhalla and John Ray's argument. Sabina Algire says censoring of poverty line. 33% and below, they are not poor. 33% and above are poor. John Ray's has argued is a really socially conscious person. He says anybody who has any deprivation, even 0.05, the fellow should be considered as poor. That's a very strong position. I personally believe this debate was there when I also joined between John Ray's and Surjit Bhalla. John Ray says no cutoff point. Anybody who has any deprivation in any of the 12 indicators should be considered as poor. I would think that would be too strong a position. And the most important point that has been pointed out by Dr. Ji also, that we have to really have a strong institutional mechanism to protect the sanctity of the indicators, and their data sources have to be robust. It shouldn't happen that, we had this discussion earlier session. We don't like national sample survey data because it is not really describing the narrative that I have. That is, you should not have narratives in search of data. You have to protect your indicators and robustness, but not necessarily rectifying some of the problems that we have in the NSS population census. Why it has not been conducted? I have no answer, but that has to be done. That will clear a lot of data-related issues. And therefore, I think we should strengthen the existing data system to be able to protect the sanctity of the multi-dimensional poverty index. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
To conclude it, if it is very pressing. Yeah.
I was being taught by Coder and other Patwani. In Australia, the poverty is calculated on the basis of one movie a week, 2 bottles of beer every day. That's part of the poverty index. That's why I said we're talking about global poverty index. Where is India globally? Where is India only at that time of nutrition? That's all I
So, thank you very much, friends. I think it was a brilliant presentation by the panelists and equally probing question from the participants. I would also like to congratulate Malhotra ji, Madan ji for organizing this conference in such a way that since morning the level of discourse is only accelerating. So really lot of learning for different kinds of people. But coming back to this session, though there are a couple of things which I feel like saying, but when time is brief, one should be very careful in choice of words. So still, I feel that as far as MDPI is concerned, it has some attributes. It's comprehensive, it is flexible, it is outcome-based. It also has a scope to include new things like vulnerability, etc., etc. So I take the criticism of flexibility by Professor Kundu that whether it is flexibility, attribute, or any other thing, as many people in the society say, education is a double-edged sword. It makes a good person better and a bad man worse. So it depends on who is the person who is doing it. As long as the responsibility for these kind of things is with the institutions who are having some standing, some integrity, it is not with the drum beater, flexibility is a desirable state. But if flexibility is given to those who are not having integrity, who are drum beaters, yes, then it is subject to be manipulated in whatever way. But I always say that we should believe in the larger goal just to make the things lighter. When women education started getting promoted in Punjab, there was a very good thought that some people, they were not sending their daughter to school because they feel that if they will go to school, they will interact with boys, they will start writing letters to boys, character will be developed. And there is a song, ये तो मेरी पोती पाली है, नहीं पढ़ जाएगी, नहीं चिट्ठियाँ बगाने नहीं देख पाएगी. So you see, now you want to stop from having that education on this ground, or you feel there are other benefits which are far more greater than this risk which is there. So it is always, there is no economic indicator which is perfect. You yourself gave example of adding milk and alcohol and cutting forest and adding to GDP. But you see, still we have no substitute of per capita income, whatever limitation GDP is having. So, in economics, there are always limitations of any indicator, and I think the purpose of doing it is that when anybody is using this indicator, he or she should be conscious of its limitations. He or she should be conscious of the kind of limitations which we have pointed out in MDPI. But out of so many things which you pointed out, I would take up one. Now, this issue of calculating at household level or at individual level. You see, I take example that suppose we want to see what is literacy in the society. Now, one approach is that if one person in the household is literate, you treat the household as literate. The second is that if any person in the house is illiterate, you don't consider that house as literate. Everybody should be literate. Everything. Now, if you want to go at a granular level, then literacy should be seen from the person. But if you want to see that it is very difficult for a country to provide literacy to each and every member, but they have prioritized that at least to enable the house that one member is there who can read it, then your priority should be that, okay, let us see whether we have succeeded at this slightly lower wish or lower desire to achieve that. This issue of children, Yogesh told me that it was discussed in the APIO. The consensus was we have to go for saturation. Like we say that even our Prime Minister often says, even if there is one person like this is not inclusive growth. So even if there is one child out of three child who has not gone to school, there is a deprivation. So this index is measured whether you have completely addressed deprivation in terms of education, or if you have partly addressed it, it will not be counted. So that is the simple meaning. It was debated. This was the conscious decision to go by this. I think for census, Professor Kundu has himself provided the answer by giving example of Scooterwala and BPO fellow following that fellow. So I would say that all these indicators, they have their own interpretation, their own limitations. Like I just conclude by saying that when I read book by Amartya Sen on measurement of inequality, the dedication is worth reading. He is just right. Dedicated to my daughters, I forgot their name, he mentioned it. Dedicated to my daughters, this and this, with the hope that they will find less of it, no matter how they decide to measure it. So thank you very much.
So, education, just one second. Education is being measured. So, you tell, education is measured by both. If there is one child in the relevant age group not going to school, not enrolled, this household is poor. And on the other hand, if there is one person in the whole household, no matter what age group, who has completed 6 years, if one person, the household is not poor. So both. For enrollment, everybody should be going to school. For yes, right. But you know, as far as the other indicator is concerned, if one person has completed 6 years, even if they very old person, household is not complete. So education comes both ways.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Now I invite felicitation. I invite Professor S. Chinnamai from Madras School of Economics, Chennai, to felicitate Professor Amitabh Kundu. Yes. Next, I invite Professor K. Parmeshwar Rao from Visakhapatnam to invite Professor K. Parmeshwar Rao from Visakhapatnam to felicitate Professor Yogesh Puri. Yogesh Puri. Love. Next, Professor N. Raj Lakshmi. Professor N. Raj Lakshmi has to felicitate Professor R.K. Mishra. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Now we close the session and for a small tea break after this cultural program will start. Thank you.